Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone up to the Highland City Council meeting on Tuesday, February 18th, 2023. We appreciate your patience while we waited to get up online. We will begin our meeting with an invocation by Councilmember Doug Courtney, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Scott Smith.
O great and loving God, we gather today with thankful hearts, grateful for the many blessings we have received. We think of those who cannot be with us tonight because of injury or illness, and we ask that you hold them in your loving embrace, giving them the gift of healing. In this month, when we celebrate the birthdays of President Washington and Lincoln, we recall President Kennedy's observation that in a democracy, every citizen holds office. Every one of us is in a position of responsibility. We pray that you will fill us with wisdom and dedication. We pray that you will help us be worthy of our offices. And we pray that you will hear and answer the prayers we hold within the silence of our hearts. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we look across the agenda, there are no public hearings on the agenda. So I'd like to invite, if you're here on any of the action items or expedited items or discussion items that you'd like to bring up with council, I'd invite you to come forward at this time in the time of the unscheduled public appearances. And you're also welcome to come up and discuss anything else or share with the council items that are going on that you feel pertinent. We'd ask that you please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. So at this time, we'll open up our meeting for unscheduled public appearances. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and address the council?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to stop by for a few minutes and introduce myself. I know a few of you already. My name is Jenny Reese, and wanted to let you know that I was recently hired by Senator Curtis as his Senior Outreach Advisor and will be focused on Salt Lake, Utah Summit, and Wasatch counties. So I will be your liaison for anything that you need from the Senator's office. I'll send you an email later this week with my work email and phone number so you know how to get in touch with me. Mayor, you have my personal cell phone, so you already know how. For those of you who don't know, I spent some time in city government myself and know and care deeply about municipal issues. So please feel free to reach out any time if I can be of help. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, just right for you to for everyone that maybe Jenny served as our great neighboring city, as Cedar Hills as their mayor. What was it, about 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
Yes, I was done at the end of 2020, so it's been 5 years now.
5 years. Yeah. So we were able to work with her quite a bit when she was there at Cedar Hills. Scott, you have a...
Yes. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your service with Senator Curtis. But as Highland City, we would like our own zip code, and we would like we'd like Senator Curtis to help us get one because we played around this for years, and we're losing a lot of sales tax dollars. Okay.
Completely understand. Something Cedar Hills struggled with as well. So Mayor already let me know that he's going to be reaching out to discuss that with me.
Okay.
I already grabbed her on it.
Well, there's two of us.
But Scott, that's good because we're thinking alike. Like,
I know.
Hey, Jenny, this is what we need. We need a zip code.
I have a comment also. We need our own zip code.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you need a zip code.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Is there anyone else like to come up and address the council?
Hello, Mayor and Council. Wesley Warren, Highland City resident. Just wanted to pop up and publicly thank Lone Peak Safety. They, my son swims for Lone Peak High, and Saturday night after the meet, they were all on the bus coming home and got a proper police escort back to the high school, and they all thought that was just the coolest thing. Every time, we met with family this weekend, and everyone keeps asking my son Holden, like, so how was swim? How was the state meet and stuff? And almost every time he leads with, well, we got a police escort home, so you tell me. But I think it's just such a neat way to kind of reach that demographic, the angsty teen demographic. You know, whether it's keeping speeds down or curbing curfew infractions at the park, I think little acts like that kind of endear the authorities to the students, and I'm all for it. So thank you, and yeah, and why not stop at zip code? How about our own area code? We should look into that. Thanks.
Baby steps.
Does anyone else like to come up and address the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll now close the unscheduled public appearances and move on to our first item, which is consent item number 2. It's the second item, consent item. We have item number 2A is approval of the meeting minutes, which was a budget retreat that the council, mayor, and staff did on January 23rd, 2025, as well as planning commissioner appointments. Our planning commissioner appointments are reappointing Chris Howden and Deborah Mong to the planning commission, and Wesley Warren and Sherry Kramer as alternates. Would the council, any of the council members like to pull either of those items?
I have an amendment to the minutes, and so I'd like to pull 2A.
Okay, so 2A. Anything else? If not, we'll take a motion on 2B then.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Doug, second by Ron. Electronic voting's not up. Okay, we'll start down here with Ron. Ron? Kim?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And Brittany?
Yes.
Item number 2B passed 5-0. Now go back to item number 2A.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I just ask, maybe just list the people that have been appointed to the planning commission? I mean, we have it in our agenda, but
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
public.
I kind of, yeah, okay. So those who are appointed to planning commission, Chris Howden has served from 2020. He was reappointed, and Deborah Mon had been an alternate, then came on to the planning commission about a year and a half ago. And so she was reappointed on those planning commissions. And Wesley Warren and Sherry Kramer were reappointed as alternate commissioners.
Thank you.
And those, they were our alternates. And I really appreciate, I know Wesley's here, but as I talked to them, I really appreciate our alternates were very involved also. I think most meetings they were able to participate, and so I appreciated their things. And as you can see up on the screen, these are their term expiration, and the alternates expire annually. So, does that help, Scott, or any?
Yeah, I just thought for the public.
Okay.
On page 8 of the agenda packet, in the minutes, there is a table showing the results of council votes on priority of items, and there are 2 spurious columns on it, the priority and value columns, and we would like to remove those.
So on, now is it page 8, just only on page 8, what you're saying is where it says value, which is a section, and then you said the percentages?
The priority and the value,
Uh-huh.
those are results from a single council member. Those are not aggregate
Oh,
data.
so remove those two.
Those
going
2
forward.
columns,
Okay.
yes.
Any comment from the council on that?
And if there are no other changes, I move to adopt the January 23rd minutes as amended.
I'll second it.
A motion by Doug, second by Scott. We'll now start with Kim,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Brittany,
Yes.
and Ron.
Yes.
Okay, that's 5-0. We'll now move on to item number 3A. This is a resolution that is establishing a speed limit for portions of Canal Boulevard and Madison Avenue. We have, I believe, Chris Trustee, our city engineer and public works director, will be giving a presentation, and then Aaron Wells. And I'd ask maybe, I went through the presentation, it might be helpful to go through that presentation, and then if there's questions after, because he might answer some of the questions that we go through that. So I assume it'll be you, Chris?
Hi, Mayor and Council. So the background on this is last year Highland City implemented a traffic calming plan to help provide opportunities for residents to submit requests to the city for areas that they had concerns with traffic.
Would you mind just maybe getting a little closer to the mic just to make
Yep.
sure everyone can-
How's this? Okay. So after our meeting, our last city council meeting, we were asked by the city council to look at changing the speed limits on the western portion of Canal Boulevard from 6,000 west to 6,800 west. We, after the meeting again, went out and set some data collection so that we could see what the traffic patterns were in that specific area. Got those out for a week and turned back in last week, and we got the data on Friday. So I thought background a little bit. We've got basically 3 major east to west corridors in Highland City that are south of the Timpanogos Highway. We've got 10400, Canal Boulevard, and then 9600 north. 10400 is designated as a 35-mile-per-hour road, while Canal Boulevard is a 30-mile-per-hour road, and then 9600 west is a 25-mile-per-hour road. Since February 4th, we've taken the following steps. We did order some signs that say cross traffic does not stop. Unfortunately, those signs were bigger than what we had thought they were going to be. So we've reordered those, and hopefully we'll have those back out and put in within the next couple of weeks.
How big were they? Because big signs are nice.
They were I think 2 feet by 3 feet, 24 by 36. So I think they would have started to block the sight triangle at that point, 3 feet wide. Speaking of, though, we did go out and have our code enforcement officer go out and review the sight triangle distance at that same intersection, and they're working with the homeowners to remove some of the branches on some of the trees that seem like it's affecting that sight triangle. We collected the speed and traffic data, and we were able to get some accident reports for 10400 and 9600 north speed and traffic data as well that we've collected in the last couple of months. So here's a table that shows what the data shows that we've collected. The Canal Boulevard, this is just the west section, so this is in between 6,000 west and 6,800 west, closer to the west end, kind of where Madison Avenue is. So you can see that what we collected in that 1 week that we had out there, the average speed was about 30.5, which is half a mile an hour over the speed limit. The 85th percentile, which represents what 85% of the traffic on the road is traveling at, was 35.5, which is 18% over the set speed limit. We had 3.6% of the trips were more than 10 miles an hour over the set speed limit. We had daily trips of just over 1,100 daily trips. We had 5 accidents total just on that stretch of Canal Boulevard. We did, over the entire length of Canal Boulevard, had about 54 accidents. Most of those were on 6,000 West and closer to North County Boulevard. Just counted up residential accesses on those portions of road. We had about 11 on Canal Boulevard. I called it 11 and a half because there's one that had access from both Canal Boulevard and from the adjacent side street. Number of schools, 0. The length for that section from 6,000 to 6,800 was approximately a mile. Again, the same data that we collected for 10400 showed a speed limit of 35 miles per hour with an average speed of 36.2, which is 1.2 miles per hour over, and 85th percentile speed of 40 miles per hour for 14% over the set speed limit. We had 3% of the trips were more than 10 miles an hour over. The daily trips was about 4,000, so much more on 10400 than what we see on either of the 2 other streets. Number of accidents that we've had on that stretch, and I know when I counted in the accesses, I stopped at Alpine Boulevard and just went west to the far west of the road. I don't think we're really considering anything east of Alpine, so I believe that that's all in that same area. Again, with 31 residential accesses, it does have the 2 schools that are right there, and it's about 2.3 miles for that length of road. I don't have any data to really shows how many pedestrians we have, but I think with the 2 schools, that's why I included those, because I think it's safe to assume that we have more pedestrian traffic on 10400 than what we probably do on either of those roads. I also thought about including a stat to say how much sidewalk we have on either of these all three of these roads, but all three of them having complete sidewalks. I don't know that there's a straight walking path on any of them. So 9600 was probably really interesting. We've got a speed limit there of 25 miles per hour, but the average speed is actually higher than the average speed on Canal Boulevard at 31.2 miles per hour. The 85th percentile is
Just to be clear about that comparison, when you're talking about Canal Boulevard, it is the section that did not have the
correct
speed tables on it.
speed tables. This is just the west section, just the data that we collected last week towards the west end. The percentage of trips that are more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit were 20%. Daily trips, we had about 1,700 on that, so slightly more than Canal Boulevard, but still substantially less than we had on 10400. We had 10 accidents, so of the three roads, it definitely has had the fewest accidents. Number of residential accesses were about 80. Again, no schools, and it was about the same length as what we had on 10400, about 2.3 miles. I thought that would be helpful just so that we get a good comparison for the council to look at the three different east-west corridors that we have as collector roads. So future steps, where we want to go from here is we've talked already with the council about installing the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the Mitchell Hollow Trail as part of that trail project. We still want to collect additional data on the east end of Canal Boulevard, so in between Alpine Highway and North County Boulevard, so we get a better feel for that section as well. And then we want to come to the council with a list of what we feel are appropriate, both active and passive solutions that could help control the speeds in those areas. And in reading some of the reports that I think predated my time with the city, I did see one report that said that so far the passive measures probably haven't been enough, and we'll have to look at some active measures. But we have also think that what really probably should happen is a combination of both active and passive measures to help control the traffic. We also want to be able to provide the city council with some cost estimates of what some of these solutions might cost to implement, because that will have some budgeting consequences. So with that in mind, there we go. We've put together two items. Two motions for the council to consider. One is a motion to reconsider so that the staff can complete additional data and bring it back to the city council, so we might be able to paint a better, more complete picture for the city council at that time once we have that additional data. Or we've got a second motion to approve the change. There we go. The speed limit for that portion of Canal Boulevard and lower it to the 25 miles per hour. And with that, is there questions that I could help with?
Scott?
Just looking, I really appreciate the data. It'll be interesting to see the other two sections of Canal Boulevard, because certainly the east side's heavily traveled.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks to me from the data you've gathered here that we've got a problem on 10400, I think, because that's a heavily used, and it's probably because of the schools. It'll be interesting how it's different when school's out. But obviously a major problem there on 9600 was speeding, and that's lined with driveways. So
Right.
it's really the least safe of the three connectors, in my opinion.
I would agree. I
And then
think the data
with,
shows that.
but we've got a park and two schools on 10400. I think we need to lower the speed limit there. I don't know what other people think, but we ought to look at that.
But it was interesting when you lower the speed limit, your average speed is actually higher. Like looking at 9600, their speed limit was 25, but it had the highest speed limit average out of the 30 and 35.
Would you mind going back to that slide, the data?
You bet.
So I know we've talked to public safety about this before, lowering speed limits, and if it actually is an effective safety measure to help with traffic and safety there. And I'd love to hear from Chief on this one, but from recollection of other meetings, sometimes lowering the speed limit actually increases safety issues there.
If it's enforced, it doesn't.
Like throwing darts there.
You had to get that jab in before you talked.
Now, I remember having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago with Mayor Mann here, and we discussed speeds and lowering speeds, and he had, and it's been a long time since I've looked at it, but he had data that I'm sure we could find somewhere that would help answer that question. So it's not been my experience has been if you lower the speed limit, people are still going to travel where they feel comfortable, and what the speed limit is, how comfortable it is for them to drive on the road. But I think the data would probably show the same thing, but it would probably be worth trying to find that again. So again, that's been 4 or 5 years ago.
So I actually did something kind of interesting. I went to all 3 roads and drove what we thought maybe should be the speed limit. And as I went down Canal, when I went down to 25 miles an hour, I'll be honest, I realized I probably wouldn't drive that. Does that mean I'm going, okay, this seems a little slower. Now, I did go over to 10-400, and I think the reason why Canal is the way that it's designed, you feel like you're supposed to be able to go a little faster. Then I went to 10-400, and I even tried to go 30 miles an hour, and I'm going, because I go, at 25, I was wondering if I was going to get some friendly waves. Luckily, no one did. But when I went up to 30, I even thought, man, they still feel comfortable to go a little faster. Now on 9600, to me, Act 25, actually between 25 and 30, did not seem outrageous to me. You know what I mean? I'm going, and I think it's the way the 3 roads are designed. One is more of an older country road, which is 9600. Canal, as I was driving through, it felt, I actually tried to do 25, and I wanted to see how many cars caught up behind me. You know what I mean? I'm going, okay, here comes 2 cars. We'll see what happens as they, at 25, now 10-400, when I was at 25, I didn't even feel like I was moving. And so that's my only concern is our data is showing, okay, if you do it 25 miles an hour, they're going to go 30, 31, or we have it at 30 miles an hour in Canal, and they're going 30. They're doing the same speed on both. But I'll be honest, coming in, I thought, why are we concerned about lowering the speed limit to 25 until I drove it? And I was going, oh, I wouldn't go that. Anyway, I don't know what the other councils maybe experience or what some of their feedback might be.
I think a big factor in the speed is the striping on the road and how wide the lane is. I remember it was Andy talked about a 9-foot wide versus a 10 versus an 11-foot. And the more narrow, the more likely you'll go slower because it's that idea of what you're comfortable with and a more narrow feel. And I went to 1120, which is 25 miles an hour in American Fork. And American Fork, a number of years ago, strategically decided to do all of their streets, the majors, at 25. I don't know the results of that as far as what impact has that had on safety. It's probably made a lot of residents mad because 25 is awfully slow. But going down 1120, the way it's striped, it really is not it's a comfortable speed at 25. You don't need to go, did I want to go 30? Yeah, it felt like I would prefer 30, but knowing it was 25 and keeping it at 25 was not a big deal. Where on trying to do that on Canal Boulevard, it would be impossible. It's just so wide and it's so open and it feels like you need to go faster in order to be at that speed that we're quote unquote comfortable with. So that comfort, I think we have some control over on these roads. So I came in tonight thinking I knew what I was going to vote for, but I really would like it to go back to the staff and really study this and look at all the options, both passive and active, and come back with some recommendations in our next meeting or even a month away, because I think I don't have enough information here tonight. Seeing these results here, I'm with Kim. It's like you're 25, but you're actually going faster than the one that's 30. The one that's 35 is obviously faster than the one that's 30. So how does that factor in? And I think we need more information. We've got it, and with that information needs to be recommendations on striping and looking at what American Fork did on 1120 to make that feel, it's got a really wide area before it even gets to the bike lane. It's got some open area there. So it just looks safe, and it feels better to go slower because of the way it's designed. So I'm leaning
Ron, when you
toward-
went and drove 1120 east there in American Fork, were you noticing were people going 25?
Yes, I didn't have many people pass me. When I went 30 down Burnett Canal Boulevard, I'm surprised at this 30.5 because I had a lot of people passing me. But I do it on purpose. I go to Costco and I go down Canal Boulevard all the way to 68. I go down to Costco and I come back 11:20. And staying 25 on 11:20, it was not a problem for me. It just wasn't.
So one of the assignments that I took upon was to talk to Mayor Frost there in American Fork. And I said, we noticed that you had, I think it was 700 east and 1120 east at 25. I says, what was your determination? They said that they decided anything that was more in a residential setting that they were going to lower the speed limits down to 25. And so that's kind of what they've done in American Fork.
Yeah.
And so,
80 driveways is residential.
Scott?
So I have a little, as I listen to this, I think it's interesting, and I'm learning a lot, but we talk about people driving what's comfortable. So is this an argument not to have speed limits? Because what's comfortable for a teenager is like 50. And I guess I'm a little concerned when 85th percentile speed by 2 schools and a brand new park, it's 40 miles an hour. I mean, that's as fast as the Alpine Highway. That's just a little worrisome to me.
I agree.
And I don't speed in American Fork because if I go over the speed limit, I oftentimes get picked up. And so I think, again, I'm not complaining against the police department, but sometimes if you know that there's a chance you'll get picked up. So I'm coming down North County and you're looking at this, not North County, but Canal Boulevard, and you've got the new speed reduction sign there, which I appreciate because by and large people are slowing down there. But I came down to it the other day. I was going 31, 32, and it says slow down. So I slow down, and the person behind me passes me. And the problem is there's not any room to really pass there very much without, if there'd been someone coming the other way, they would hit him. And you know what? I timed it. I got to the stoplight at Alpine Highway 20 seconds after they did. So it's an educational thing. Everybody's in a big rush on the roads, but nobody cares about how they affect anybody around them. And I don't know how you educate or train or change that, but I think we have to be really careful when we start talking about saying speed limits based on comfort. Because whose comfort? So just a little,
I would take just a slightly different view of that, which is that we set the speed limits at where we think they should be, and we adjust the road so that that's the comfortable level for most people. Not that we set the speed limit based on comfort, but that we adjust comfort to match the speed limit. And like we talked about 2 weeks ago, that whether we change the speed limit tonight, whether we change the speed limit in April, whether we change the speed limit in 6 months, that's not going to be the full solution. That may be part of it, but it's no more than part of it.
And maybe I interject really quick? Usually speed limits, there was a time, I have seen UDOT where they will set a speed limit based on the 85th percentile speed, but I don't think that is the case for most municipalities. Usually the speed limit is set by context. What is the use of this road? What do we see this road as? It's a collector road. It should be 30, it should be 35. It's not based on what you feel comfortable driving necessarily. So you're right, we have to implement some active or passive measures to help get drivers to feel a little bit less comfortable driving at those speeds. I will anecdotally also, maybe I wanted to include that I drove all 3 of these streets earlier today, and when I drove down 9600 North, I did see a police officer with someone pulled over. So they do patrol, and
Yay.
And he didn't arrange that between the two of us. I think that was
Good job.
So the other thing I think, Council, here we are really just talking about Canal Boulevard, but we see 2 other roads. If we decide to look at Canal Boulevard, I think this is where we got to say, well, what other roads in the city need to be also looked at? Because, what's the criteria? And I think that's the question that comes back is we did this traffic studies or we've done this traffic calming. Have we gotten enough that we're saying, okay, well, we've got 9600 at 25, and that's probably one of the only streets that we'd classify as a collector in the city at 25. Go back to your map, if you wouldn't mind, the map that had all those So, I mean, you got.
North of Timpanogos, there.
Yeah, and then you've got there's 11,200, I think, up. That's the other purple. So I mean, you only got those two, and 11,200 is a lot more residential. So you have a residential, but this is your mapping as we're looking at. Are we prepared to say, okay, because I think you'll see others coming, hey, you've done Canal at 25. Are we willing to start looking at other roads similar with that?
What about 11,800? That takes a lot of traffic.
It does.
It'd be nice to compare all of them.
So, I mean, we can, if you want to make a motion to do it there on Canal, we can, or, we've talked about that also in April. We wanted staff to come back, I think, on April 8th to try to do a more presentation saying, hey, is our traffic calming? This is what we're supposed to be doing on these roads. And does that, and I know that we've heard from a lot of residents that they're concerned about the different speed. But, I mean, as I'm looking and going, okay, we've got different roads. So I look at 6,000 West in front of Highland Elementary. I assume that's why, that's at 30. But 6,400 West, where I live over by, is 35. And I'm going, okay, I know we don't have an elementary school, but I'm going, we've got some inconsistencies on some of our speed limits in the city. Anyway, council, what would you like to do? You want to, you got two motions in front of you. One is to kind of, it appears to continue it maybe till April, and one is to move forward with changing the speed limit on Canal.
Continue it.
You have a motion? I mean, is someone strong one way or another?
I
for the
move
motion?
the city council direct the staff to complete the data gathering process and bring a recommendation for appropriate traffic calming methods along Canal Boulevard back to council for further consideration by April 2025. But I would like to add to that we also look at traffic calming requirements for 10,400 and 9,600 along with that.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron, second by Doug. Any further discussion before we vote on this motion?
May I ask a question, Mayor? Clarification. Councilmember Smith mentioned 11,800. I mean, so we brought forward to you the two collector roads that are the most near to Canal, but are you interested in us doing a study on all of the collector roads throughout Highland or just the ones on the south side?
I really think we ought to have an open discussion about all the collector roads. Because, and the mayor brought this up, I mean, we got some roads at 25, we got some at 30, we got at 35, and of course they're all unique and different, but I find it's interesting that the fastest road is the one by two schools and a park. So I just think it'd be nice to look at, if we're going to do it, can we do it all by April and look at all of them?
So,
I mean,
Chris,
you've
that's the only
collected a
thing.
lot of data
Is that,
just
I
in
mean,
2 weeks.
if we said we need 11,800, I mean, if we just said, okay, let's go east and west roads, that would be 11,800, 11,200. We're not going to be able to do any of the highways, so we can't do SR 92. Then you got 10,400, you have Canal, and you have 96. Now, if we wanted to add in, we've got a lot of people that comment about 5,600 west. We have comments about 6,000, 6,400. And you're going to get comments probably even down Highland Boulevard.
Well, how about
I think-
east-west, first of all?
Yeah, we could start with that. I think ideally we'd like to leave the counters out for 2 weeks. With Canal Boulevard on that west section, we just left it out for 1 week so we could get some results back. But it really, we just need to have at least a week's worth of data. We want to make sure that it's not during spring break or other times when people might be out of school or things that could affect the data that we get.
How many roads can you collect data on at a time? Only one? Or
Only one.
So if you want to do all of them, we probably are looking more at like May to June, I would
Probably.
guess.
Yeah.
And so if, number one, do you want to do that? And if so, are you comfortable with what we are planning on doing Canal in the meantime?
And you're talking about the other,
The RFRDs and putting up the additional signage and working on the site triangles, those things that we had already gotten council's direction to do.
I'm fine with doing that and then going along with Ron's motion.
Okay, right now the motion is only for 9,600 and 10,400. Do we have an amendment to that motion, or does that make sense if we're trying to add, or do we want to continue with the motion we had?
Maybe you could say for all east-west collector roads, because I think that's the intention.
which there's basically 5, because Timpanogos is a major arterial.
So that would take 10 weeks.
Yeah, we can't do. That's our new-
So what, you guys want to vote on the current motion or is an alternate motion?
Well,
'Cause that's right, you have a motion before you for 9,600 and for 10,400 that would be come back in April. Is there an amendment to that motion, or do we want to move forward and vote on that? motion?
I'll make that amendment. I just think we ought to look at all 5 east-west corridors, which is 11,800, 11,200, 11,400, Canal Boulevard, and 9,600. And I think it'd be good to do some comparison because they have different speed limits on every one. It'd be nice to see.
I second
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, second by Ron. Okay, the amendment is to do all east-west, which would be 11,800, 11,200, 11,400, or 10,400, Canal Boulevard, and 9,600. Is that my understanding, Scott?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, we would vote on the amendment unless there's a different. Okay, so that is what we are voting on, is the amendment first. So we will start here with you, Doug.
Yes.
Okay, Scott.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
And Kim.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 5-0. Now, Rob, I don't believe we need to vote on the first amendment because this one passed, correct?
You still need
Now
to
you
vote.
need to vote on the main question.
Okay, now we got to come back to the original one that Ron and Doug did.
Except it's
No.
now been amended.
And it's
So
been-
now you're just, before you're deciding whether to amend it, now you're deciding, now that's been amended, do we want to move forward with it?
Okay.
So what's this on the screens here? This is kind of confusing.
We are
Motion
going
on
to start guessing.
This is what it looks like when the electronic voting doesn't work. Those are not actually yes and no's.
I'll tell you, when I saw this come up, I go, we're going to guess on everyone's vote, and then we're going to reveal if we got the guess right. Okay, so now we're voting on the original amendment from Ron and Doug, and we'll start here with Scott. And so explain what we're voting.
This is the
Yes.
amended amended motion.
Correct.
So
So what you just said, this is now, first you voted whether to change the motion to be all east-west collectors. That passed. So now it is, now that that's the motion, do you want to move forward with us doing east-west
And
collectors?
my vote is yes.
and Brittany
Yes.
and Ron.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
One quick clarification. Can we still come back in early April with traffic calming measures for that portion of canal, or does that really need to be part of the broader?
Your motion
Discussion.
was that was part of the broader motion.
Yeah.
That was what was in the
I
motion.
don't want to do it in isolation.
That being said, we're happy to continue to provide you updates, like as we have some information.
We're still on item number 3A if you want to make a motion towards that.
No, I'm good. The reason I was asking was that we told residents 2 weeks ago that we would be coming back in the beginning of April.
April 8th is the date.
So an update would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll plan for that.
Okay. well,
So
now-
Rob, just to clarify then, so staff can't just do whatever is in the traffic calming toolbox already without bringing it back to us if it's under the 25,000 or whatever, because we made this motion on these specific roads?
We can, and staff is already doing some of those other things that we've already outlined, the RRFDs, the site triangles, those type of things. Staff will continue doing that. And for general traffic calming, if we get a result, Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, if it comes back and the manual and the report says, we'll do this passive thing and it costs, $2,000 for a few signs, staff can just do that. We don't bring that back to council.
Got it.
But where you're looking at maybe changing or kind of imposing a broader city-wide, here's how we handle our collectors and calming those and maybe setting speed limits for all of those, that's something that staff really just can't implement directly.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay, we'll now move on to item 3B, which is an action item. It's the fire station driveway reconstruction bid award, and this will be Chris. Thank you for coming.
Sorry, this is a little bit jumpy today, or maybe it's me. So the existing concrete parking lot at the fire station has started to fail. It's exhibited substantial cracking, spalling, and failure on that parking lot. Part of the reason for that, we think, is because it was a tight turn radius to get in there. The parking lot was kind of too small for some of the larger vehicles that we get in there. And so we we went back and we did include some budget money in this year's budget, $100,000 to redo that parking lot, to make it bigger, and to accommodate some of the larger vehicles. And so we came back to the city council after we had an engineer's estimate of $340,000 and said we were way low on our estimate, or our original estimate. We need some more money to continue forward with this, and the city council agreed that they wanted to see this as an all concrete parking lot and to move forward with soliciting bids for this. This is a picture of the redesign of the parking lot. It's a little bit difficult to see on the display. You can kind of see the blue area will be a thickened slab, so it will be where we expect to see the vehicles driving in and going into the fire department itself. We've also added some additional parking out by the street and then around the perimeter of that parking lot. We put this out to bid on the state's bid procurement package, and we got the low bid actually came in from Concrete in the amount of $223,382, so substantially under what our original engineer's estimate was. We had about, I think we had 20 bids on this. We actually had to reject one of them because the bid was late. But that honestly, I was surprised that we got that many bids. I think right now is a good time for concrete work, and I hope that this carries over when we look to do the sidewalk on 6000 West.
How soon would they start pouring?
We'll have a pre-con probably within the next couple of weeks. We did have, I want to say, a fairly wide window on the actual construction of this. That was intentional. We thought it would help us work with the contractor to get the best prices that we could. So I don't have an exact date yet, but hopefully I will by the next city council meeting.
Years ago, we used to, when we poured in the winter, add calcium. I don't know what the standard is now, but hopefully they're looking at that, because you're going to have frost.
Right. Yep.
Or
Definitely
freezing,
concerned.
I mean, not frost, but freezing.
Yep. So typically we would add a 10% contingency to the bid, so the total bid award would be up to $244,620.20, and we have a motion to that effect. Unless there's questions that I can.
Yeah. Just a couple questions. So basically, we've already appropriated $100,000 towards this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I read through the thing about we get the other 144. So on the map you showed us, I've been confused. How do you get the fire trucks between those trees?
The trees will be removed, or it will be part of the.
I knew that.
Yeah.
Where are you going to? Are you just going to chop those trees down, or is there a way to kind of use them somewhere?
I think it would be difficult to relocate those trees. I think they're too mature, and my experience has usually been when you try to really relocate trees that mature, it doesn't usually
We've
work.
done some in our neighborhood that have been quite successful. It's just kind of sad to chop them down.
I agree with Scott on this. I hope we at least look at that option. 10-minute look at it. Not a deep thing, but is it possible? And talk to a few people.
I'll be happy to meet Josh out there and see if we can do that, see what his thoughts are, and if he wants to bring in someone else that's done that, we can certainly do that as well.
I just know somebody that will come and remove them. He works with Patterson, and then because he gets paid a significant amount of money to have matured trees in areas, so I can give you that contact information.
Thanks, Kim. I think that's a great idea.
I think it'd be interesting to see if they do these trees. I know big pine trees they want, but it'd be interesting on these type of trees if they want to try to save them. Now, let me ask you, Chris, this also has some of our planter boxes where we've had Toscana come over and allowed to garden. And looking at the picture, it appears like it's taking out 2 or 3 or 4. Is the anticipation we still could have some residents still use the planter boxes?
No, it takes them all out.
Yeah, not at that location. We'll have to remove
They'll be
them all.
relocated.
And the thought was that we'd put it over, at the tree lot.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure we had that on the record.
And I assume you have irrigation over the other tree lot.
We do.
The answer to this is probably evident in the fact that you're recommending the concrete bid. But looking at the fact that it's significantly lower than our estimate, and really looking at the other bids, it's substantially lower than almost all of the other bids. Are we really confident in this company?
We have done our due diligence, and we have contacted their references, and we've talked to other people who have used them in the past, and everything came back with a good reference. So we really see no reason not to proceed with them.
Perfect. I don't at all object
Well,
to
no,
saving the money.
I think what you're bringing up, Doug, you always want to make sure if there's also a low ball, then everyone's up. But you do have another one. This one's at 222.
There is one that's just
Two-
about
235.
10,000 above it, but then it jumps 50,000 to the next one.
I'll just, on the parking lot striping, I have to laugh because everyone said 1,800. I think the 1,650 or $1,000 is cheap. I will tell you in my own business, I can get 30 lots or 30 parking stalls done between $250 to $400. I don't think I keep laughing and going, why does the government get charged so much to do things? It's just
We've always been told that it's the bonding that we
I
require.
know, and we don't pay up front. I mean, I pay half down. It's a guy, he's going to go do 2 or 3 places, and I'm going to pay him the day he's done. Where these, they don't get paid until they're done. Maybe it's 30 days late. I have some friends do that, and yeah, because the 30 days, they've got to float the payroll. They've got to get their bonding. They don't want to bid. It's just, if there's enough work, then they move on.
Right. A lot of times in the private industry, you can have them on for the next project and the next one and the next one. But with the city, we like to go out and make sure that we have a clean slate every time.
With that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that City Council approve the bid award to Concrete in the amount up to $244,620.20.
Second.
I have a motion by Kim, second by Doug. We'll start with Brittany.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
5-0. We'll now move on to our next action item, which is council meeting times and structure. This is item number 3C, and this will be Rob Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, this is the follow-up from our discussion the Council had last Council meeting. You discussed both changing the start time of Council meetings from 7 to 6, and then some kind of ancillary issues of how we'd handle work sessions, public hearings, and other matters. And you directed staff to bring back the meeting time change and kind of make the item broad enough to discuss those other things as well. So we proposed an ordinance that would update our meeting schedule to change it from 7 to a 6 p.m. start time. Scroll. The first question we had was just, when does the council, assuming you want to move forward with this, when do you want to move forward? Is this an immediate March 4th begins it, or do you want to have a couple months out? There was some talk about maybe holding a public hearing beforehand. The question is, what would the council like to do in terms of timing?
Immediate.
Immediate.
I think you need some lead time to educate people because for decades, our city council has started at 7 o'clock. And so a lot of people assume that. So I think you need to have a month or two to advertise it in the newsletter and online and different things so that people don't show up here at 7 to talk in the meeting and it started an hour before and they can't talk unless the mayor is willing just to invite them to come up. But I think you need at least a month or so to advertise it.
We also need to realize that we have several work sessions planned for the budget between now and June, that if we do this immediately, we're adding additional meetings rather than just extending the, probably. There are other options that are in the agenda packet, but likely we're adding, which isn't necessarily a reason not to do it, just to understand that that's what.
Yeah, I think the idea that we floated is that it would be the second Tuesday of each month would be the potential work session. Anytime there is a need for a work session, we would do it on the second Tuesday of the month. There may be exceptions. I can envision where we have a situation for whatever the reasons are that we would have to do it just before our meeting, which would mean we'd have to be here at 5. And that would be an exception. It's not going to be regular, but we would have to ask the council for that one day, maybe 2 days a year, to be here at 5. But normally, I think we'd try to organize it. It would be up to the city to organize it in such a way that we take care of it on the second Tuesday at a 6 o'clock meeting.
But I think Councilmember Courtney is right, especially for this budget year. We would need to have some of these, I think, at 5 o'clock, just because I mean, I know it's a long time frame, but it's a very tight time frame in terms of when we're ready to give you things, right? So if it doesn't happen to be ready on that second Tuesday, and some of these I don't think would be, we would need some 5 o'clock meetings.
So the other thing is when we're saying we're starting at 6, what you're saying is that April and May time period, we might already be starting at 6 because of budget work sessions or because of the budget sessions or something. I mean,
Yeah, like the March one, actually. So that was supposed to be on a city council, sorry, I just pulled up the budget calendar. So March 18th, we were supposed to have a work session. And so that one, I was intending to start at 6 o'clock anyway, or maybe 5:30. And so just depending on if we're waiting a month for this to take effect, then no change there.
That's another argument to wait a little bit of time, because I cannot come at 5 o'clock. I have a day job. And 5 o'clock meetings are really hard for me to come to. I can agree to come to 6 o'clock, but if, in the future, if you have council members that have a job in Salt Lake, you're basically saying they aren't welcome. So I think you have to kind of be careful unless people are working remote. So, I can come at 6 o'clock. I'm willing to make that compromise, but having lots of work sessions at 5 is going to be really hard.
Does this work for you?
Yeah.
Keith? You work in Salt Lake?
Yeah, 6 I can make, 5 I can't.
Yeah, so it would be the second Tuesday, but you're saying that that's not always possible.
Especially in the near future, we're also doing general plan potential work sessions on that second Tuesday, because that's the only time we don't have planning commission and council. We also need to hold budget work sessions. So we have a lot of work. We know no one likes extra meetings. We want to make sure you're prepared.
That's fine. Didn't just change it however you feel would best fit into schedules.
well, I think what they're asking is, do we start March 4th? Do we wait till after budget? Do we do it, in May? Scott mentions maybe we got to advertise the residents. So
Well, I think residents need to have a little lead time here.
So, I think we got to give staff, or, we need to say, okay, it's going to start July 1 with the new budget year, or it's going to start, 1st of April. But be aware that we do have work sessions. We're trying to do the general plan, and we've got budget. I think that's what.
So most of these work sessions are going to be before May 1st, I would think. Why not just have it start May 1st at 6 o'clock and then go ahead and do all of our work sessions and stuff in the next month or two? Because that's budget. By May 1st, you pretty much got the budget settled.
Yeah, I like that.
I agree with that. Let's wait a minute.
That's great.
Okay, so is there a motion?
Hold
But
on.
I had a question.
What else do you need a clarification on?
Sorry, Councilmember Bills.
A 9 o'clock drop dead sign. Instead of 10, we ended at 9.
I had wondered if it would make sense to hold planning commission at the same time, just so it was consistent every week at 6 o'clock. So I emailed all the planning commissioners, and I was surprised that none of them had super strong feelings about it.
Their meetings are also shorter.
Yeah.
No, but you had Trent saying that said, hey, if this did move,
That would
there'd be
make it
There'd
harder.
be certain times of the year I cannot do at 6 o'clock.
We'll probably have a follow-up discussion because we have planning commission next week. Because I want to, depending how the council moves and with your comments, say council has changed this, whatever day. You got an email from Brittany. Any other thoughts on it, and have a kind of discussion?
But I think consistency, one of the things, you learn with individuals, you got to be consistent. If you have planning commission at 7 and city council at 6, they might be able to work through that, but consistency, we just got to be consistent.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I agree with the consistency. Since we've kind of talking about a lot of things, are we talking a little bit about the structure of the meeting too? Can we talk a little bit? So Brittany and I were talking. It seems to me like it would make sense on any meetings where we have a public hearing that we do the public hearing at the start of the meeting. And I think that's more respectful of the people that come.
Correct.
So I would say anytime we have a public hearing, it's number one on the agenda after the consent item.
We talked about in the staff meeting today that we would move it maybe even before consents. Just move it right after public comment, and then you have public hearings.
Yeah.
Because I agree. But one concern we did have is sometimes on public hearing, we don't know how many people one item could have one person, and one item could have 10 that want to get up. And so I know there was a comment, maybe, hey, we say this one's at 7:10 and the next one's at 7:20. I'd be nervous about saying when they're going to start. That would be the one concern.
And our staff's practice is to put the public meeting or public hearings, excuse me, as the first action item. So it's just, do you want to keep that practice or do you want to put them even above consent?
I'd recommend above consent, because every now and then you get a consent item that.
Yeah, I'll support the mayor on this. I think number one, we have the prayer, Pledge of Allegiance, and then we do the public hearing.
Well, you'll do unscheduled public
Yeah.
appearances, and we'll let them know if there's public
Yeah.
hearings, they can come up after that. Very good. Are you guys okay with unscheduled public appearances before the public hearing?
Sure.
Yeah, and then would presentations be after that as well?
Yes.
Because that can sometimes take a while.
Well, the only thing is sometimes your public hearing, you might have a presentation that gives context for comments.
I think she's talking about presentations as in when the
When people come.
youth council was here.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
Or the library board or
Yeah.
Senator Kennedy or something
What do
like
you guys
that.
feel on that? That's a good question on the presentations, because they're also trying to.
They're not very often, but when they are there, they tend to take some time. And it's usually, we've put them in front because you're usually, I mean, we're trying to accommodate whoever's here for the presentation. But I mean, should that be any different than the public hearing people?
Well, but the presentation would be hard too, because you have your presenters and they'd have to sit through the public hearing and try to figure it out. But maybe we need to put a time limit on the public hearing and say, we're going to talk about this for 1 hour, not 4, but 1 hour. And because a lot of times we have a lot of people come, they say the same things over and over and over and over. And so I don't know, because you got to be fair to the presenters too. What do you think?
I love that.
Okay.
Doesn't Alpine have a time limit on public hearing? And Eagle Mountain also?
I think you want to leave enough time, but you know.
Yeah.
I think as long as we make sure there's enough time, and we can be flexible, because we'll know the big issues coming in.
Right.
The one
We can give them an hour and a half.
Yeah, but even you look at your Canal Boulevard, you had a good 10 to 15 people that came up. And so even that item, it will take at least an hour for on things. So, okay, let's come back to the structure of the meeting.
So with or the work sessions, just kind of recirculate on that issue. So I came up with some options. With the 5 o'clock option, I know that it would be hard for some council members to make that. It also would be somewhat hard for staff, as city offices are still open for that hour. So, Stephanie might have a cemetery appointment at that time. I might have a planning appointment. So we could block it off. We'd make it work because it wouldn't be all that often, but just that would be a thing to consider as well. We also just could keep it at a 6 o'clock. We just put the work session for the first hour of the meeting, and just kind of a hard limit on, we're doing a work session. So if you're here for the meeting, come at 7, which is the normal time, which is how we do it now, essentially. Or we try to hold another day where we can. And we could be flexible. We could, do the second and third option there as, needed. But what does the council think?
I'm not particularly fond of the first two options. The 5 p.m. I think really does create a hardship for people. And I think it's important to start our meeting at a consistent time for the public. That if it starts at 6 o'clock, unless we're having a work session, in which case it starts at 7 o'clock, that seems problematic for residents.
What about if we say the work session, it's an hour. If we had to come earlier, what about if we just say that council meeting needs to, if we even conclude at 9, a work session goes till 10? Does that
Right.
mean
The work session could be at the end.
The end.
But that also, if you're tired, sometimes works. But I'm saying, we always did it at the front, you always could put it at the end.
That's another option. I didn't put that on there.
Yeah, I could just put it on the end of the meeting. Because
Yeah,
we're going to try to be
I-
done
I
at 9,
like
but
that
occasionally
one.
do a work session.
The end is easier to me than coming back another day.
Actually, I like that the very best.
I do too.
Yeah.
Are we going
Good
to be
idea.
too tired? So that's still, you've done a
But-
3-hour council meeting from 6 to 9. Are we going
We're
to be
still
too
gonna be
tired
home
to
by
really have a
10.
work session?
That's good.
It's the same amount of time during the day, regardless of when it is, right? It's either
Right.
from 6 to 7 or
Yeah.
from 9 to 10.
So when do you want to be tired, in the council meeting or in the work session?
Work session.
Work session.
As long as we can still get feedback. I feel like at the end of our meetings, sometimes,
We're moving fast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
But
usually
our
when it's
problem
after
is
11.
When you have city council at 7, if you start at 6, you've got to be done by 7. So you still got to get that feedback. And maybe that night we can try to get done even by 8:30. So we try to
Okay.
move a little better.
Sounds like council's directing staff to put work sessions at the end of meetings.
Right.
Is council, I think that's what we're saying.
I think
Okay.
that's what we're saying. And I don't mind waiting. Well, now that we're doing that, do we need to wait other than maybe a month? Do we need to wait until
Well-
May?
It was the start time that was the reason to wait, to keep that, I believe.
The question is, if we're gonna do work sessions, were we making the time change on May 1st because of the work sessions, because of budget and that? Or if we're gonna move it at the end, do we move it after, on March 4th, or do we give 30 days notice, or do we wait still till May 1st?
I think we still wait until May 1st, just because we know the budget items are coming up and we know that we don't want to be tired for that. Like, just seems like those are kind of set already as well.
That sounds
So
good.
let's just start May 1st. That's 2 months. Well, actually, it's just a month and a half.
Okay, so
Right.
May
No,
1st.
2 months. It's 2.5.
And then we have a work sessions will be, after May 1st, will be at the end of the meeting. And then we will have a set time at 6 PM.
Okay. And one other kind of topic that the council floated last time was we have a kind of a meeting time limit. Do you want to have an item time limit where you'd actually have to extend items? It would be a lot more kind of ticky-tacky. You'd have to, you'd hit your 20 minutes and someone would have to move to extend for another 20 minutes. It's an option up to council. I don't know if that's.
We
something
would
you
be
want to
doing that
consider.
all night long.
Yes.
So I say no.
Great. Any other? Okay, so with that, it sounds like we have a consensus. So at the end there's the motion we've prepared, and at the end of it, just for the first meeting in May, and we will get that set up for the council.
I move the city council adopt the ordinance amending the 2025 council meeting schedule with the stipulation that the amendment should take effect beginning of May.
May 1st, yeah.
Do you need anything more than that?
I'll second.
I have a
So-
motion by Ron, second by Brittany. Did you have a comment?
So are we just changing the meeting time to 6? But all these other things we've talked about in a work session, and that will come back to us in a work session?
We'll just implement that on the agenda
just do
when
it
we
agenda-wise.
adopt it.
We don't
Okay,
need
but
to
that doesn't need to be part of the motion?
It does not.
No.
Okay.
Is everyone clear on the motion? Really, the motion is just to start May 1st at 6 PM. Okay, with that, we'll start back here with Ron,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
Okay, we're now at 6 o'clock. I gotta move my massage time. I always get. Okay.
Are you going to be able to fit that in before the 6 o'clock? Because we like you getting here all nice and relaxed.
I get my
You
massage.
know, I say, where's the mayor?
I go for 20 minutes from 6 to 6:20 to calm me down before I come. I'll just move my massage time.
At least you didn't say pedicure.
Okay, we'll now go to item number 4A. These are expedited items. We have number 4A. It's an action. It's the farmer's market contract approval, and this is Rob.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As you recall, we had a discussion a little while ago. We have our friendly farmers market people out in the audience patiently waiting. We did write, this is essentially the same contract as we had last year. And we did write that we could extend it just with approval, except we're now changing who we're contracting with. Heather will still be involved, but as she explained to the council before, may be gone for some time, a little bit more difficult. So she'll be still working, but it's going over to Good for Life Markets, Denise Christiansen, who has done other cities and has done a lot of farmers markets. We were all excited to work with her as well. Heather will still be working with Denise as well. The only other changes I made to the contract was to make it a little more flexible and less specific to what we did last year. So I pulled out the fee schedule, removed some reporting requirements, and allowed Josh to make approval for any kind of changes to the site layout without having an amendment to the contract. So with that, everything else stays the same. I'm happy to answer any questions. They're also here to answer any questions if you would like.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that City Council approve the memorandum of understanding for the Highland Farmers Market with Good for Life Markets LLC.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'll second.
So Doug seconded. Okay.
Are we working on getting more electricity over there? Because we talked to that being one of the priorities.
Well,
More electrical outlets.
we need to figure out how to make that happen because it needs to happen before the budget is adopted. in order to be useful to us.
Okay,
But it's
And-
not in the budget.
but,
So
okay.
we need to.
Either do a
But I
budget.
thought
Yeah,
that
it's
was
not in
one of
this
the
year's-
priorities on the
This
list.
fiscal year's budget. We need to figure out some way to make that happen. Yeah, a budget amendment. So
Okay, I have a motion by Kim, second by Doug on the farmer's market contract. Anything else? Okay, we'll start with Kim.
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
5-0. We'll now move on to item number 4B, which is it's a 2025 Central Utah Water Conservancy District Assessment. This will be Chris. By the way, thank you for your help with the farmer's market. And I don't know if you know, the Lone Peak Business of the Year was the Highland Farmers Market, so congratulations.
That's awesome.
That's what, which chamber is that? Mountain West.
Mountain West.
Well, congratulations to both of you. That is awesome.
Congratulations.
We're looking forward to another farmer's market.
It truly has been a great addition to Highland. It truly has. Yep. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Chris.
I'm going to make a lot.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I didn't include another slide for this, but this is an assessment that the city has budgeted for in our current budget. It's a payment that we make every year, but because it's over the $25,000 threshold that our city administrator can approve, we need to bring it to City Council for approval. So with that, we're asking the City Council to approve this assessment payment.
Can I ask other people on the council? Has my memory been bad? I know we approved this in the general budget. I don't remember it ever coming to the council.
It hasn't. This is a new item because it's over the spending limit of $25,000 our city administrator.
But it's been over that for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
And so we're just kind of correcting something that we haven't done in the past.
According to our policies. That's why we're doing
So let me just make another comment. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, Chris. But, you know, it looks to me, and for projections in the future, that it's going to go up and up and up and up. And, you know, at some point it's going to be $150,000 and different things. That's a significant portion coming out of our funds. I think it would be really nice if a representative for the Central Utah Water Project came and talked about it a little bit, about what they're doing to upgrade facilities, why they need more and more money every year. I mean, it'd be just nice to get kind of an overview of the Central Utah Water Project and the conservation district that we're involved in. Because a lot of times it seems like government entities just like to kind of keep raising what it costs, but we don't understand as representatives of the citizenry why it costs us more and what we need to do to explain it to constituents if they ask us about this. So it'd just be nice if we could have somebody from the Central Utah Water Project come maybe in the summer and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we need more funds every year. Because before long, it's going to be not 94,000. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be 200,000. You know, so I just think we need to understand it.
I think that's a great idea. We not only have Central Utah, but we have the other irrigation companies that it seems like everybody's raising their rates this year. All of them have some really big projects that they're working on, just to upgrade the system. And so I think that would be great. We could have each of those irrigation companies come in at a work session at the end of our city council meeting to explain some of these projects that they have going on.
Perfect.
You know, as we talk about presentation, Central Utah purchased the gravel pit. I think they'd be great. I'd really love to have them, Chris, if we could work it out.
And explain.
Them to come in and share what their plans are with the gravel pit, and then we can talk about projects maybe that they're doing. Now, is Jeff Murdoch go to these meetings? Is this one of the meetings he would go to?
I don't know that Central Utah has meetings. I know that he goes to the Lehigh and American Fork, and I've been going to the Highland Conservation. I don't know that I've seen an invite for Central Utah, though.
I mean, I know as they were doing the gravel pit, me and Andy and Aaron would go down quite often down to the Orem offices and visit about what was going on. But it would probably be good because there's some clarity. We need to find out there's county land inside that gravel pit.
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to have that annexed? I mean, it'd be nice to know what their overall plan, how long Kilgore's going to be there, what they anticipate, when they anticipate taking it over, what they're going to do. Do they anticipate they have extra ground? I mean, there's probably a ton of questions it'd be good for us to almost have on the public record about what they're planning to do.
And we did have, Jeff and I both met with Central Utah a few weeks ago to talk, not about the gravel pit, but about their overall kind of projects that they're working on right now. When we met with them, they were still working on their plans for the gravel pit and the recharge system, but we'll follow up with them and we'll try to get them to come in and talk about that once they get a little bit more defined on what their plans are.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. So I move that the Highland City Council approve the payment of the 2025 Central Utah Water Conservatory District Assessment, which is annotated in the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, second by Kim.
Is there a reason the actual amount that we're approving is not in the motion? Because it typically is.
I got so excited with Canal Boulevard and the parking lot that I didn't really look at this item as well as I should have.
It's
on the
94,000. What's the
Yeah,
change?
I saw what it was. It's just not in the.
94,509.80 less there was.
Okay, so I'll add that 94,509.0. What?
Good.
It's okay.
0.80.
Okay.
Are you still a good second on that amount, Kim?
Yes.
Okay, we'll just have that as a, okay, with that, we'll start here with Doug.
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
Brittany?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
5-0. Now move on to a discussion.
One quick item, and Chris, I'm going to hit it now so I don't forget it, just catching you after the meeting. I know it's only a 25-cent difference, but can we check and see?
Absolutely. I've already got an email out
Okay.
to the individual that was listed as the contact, just for that and to make sure that they have the correct name for their contact with Highland City.
One of the items, if you multiply out the rate per acre foot versus the number we have, was off by 25 cents in the invoice.
Per acre foot or a total?
It was off 25 cents total.
Okay.
Okay, we're now moving on. I appreciate you catching that. It's something I would have caught. The next item is we're going to discuss city committees, and that will be Rob Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item came up when Stephanie was, traditionally, we have done open public meeting trainings for all of our committees. Arts Council, Highland Fling, I'm blanking on them right now. The operating ones, I should say at least. We have a couple that aren't really operating. And as she was doing that, we had a discussion with some people involved in those and Jay, and it was kind of confusing about what's actually happening versus what our code says should be happening, what state law says maybe should be happening. And so I would bring that to the council to see what you'd like us to do. And if I can not scroll. No. It died. All right. So per our city code, all members of any committee are supposed to be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the council. Required to provide notice of meetings and to keep minutes, which staff has always interpreted as basically following all of the Open Public Meetings Act requirements. And they're supposed to have a limited scope. They're not supposed to make decisions or kind of implement things. They're supposed to be advisory, do research, or carry out council decisions. In practice, that's not always exactly how it works out. So here are our current by our municipal code, our current committees versus the planning commission. It conflicts a little bit with what we have in the development code, which has been more updated. Our development review committee, which does not match what our actual development review committee is. The library board, which kudos to Donna, functions perfectly. The arts council, which functions very well, but there's a code in our code says they have term limits, which we have not really followed. And we might have had some appointment questions about whether they've all been appointed by the mayor with the council advice.
Yeah,
That
and
kind of
I
goes-
believe none of them have. I believe they've all been appointed by the Arts Council.
Which is, so that's a good point as well. We have a Parks, Trail, and Tree Commission, which I don't think is functioning currently. We have, so the Highland Fling, I could find references to the Fling Committee going back into the 80s. There was an ordinance that kind of got passed that Doug found that then kind of didn't make it into the code later. Currently, it kind of operates as a very large board of everyone who's involved in it, which makes it really unclear who's supposed to be making decisions, what is a quorum. If there is a quorum, because we have a budget that we give the fling, is it staff that administers it? Is it supposed to be these committee members? It's just not been very clear. We have a Historical Society, which does well. They are an ad hoc committee, though. They were established just by kind of council fiat. They've just been ongoing. If no reason to not continue with them, but we might just want to make them a permanent committee if they've been going on for the past decade. And then we have our Emergency Preparedness Committee that Ron is in charge of, that the council created last year. It's supposed to give us a report in April. So this is just kind of where we're at right now. It's some of these committees, Arts Council and Fling, Planning Commission, Development Review Committee just need to kind of be removed from the municipal code. Just let us handle it as the development side. But the rest of these, we just want to make sure we're lining up what we're doing with best practices, and we're making sure, especially for like Fling or Arts Council, whatever money the city is giving to them is being handled according to our purchasing policies and getting approved by the right staff or council as need be. That was some of the concerns I had looking through this, and I wanted to see if this was something the council would be interested in me spending some time to bring something to the council as a potential, what I see as a fix. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to speak to the Fling Committee in particular. I think does need to be scaled down so that we have a reasonable chance of having a quorum, and that scaling down, I don't know if it's 9 or 7, it's some odd number, but probably not 5, but at least 7 members, then 4 would be a quorum. And then everybody else that serves, and there's 20 people or so involved in that, all of us need to recognize that they're the ones that are making the decisions. I mean, they're going to be working with the council and working with Jay to bring us the decisions that have to be made. Do we go to 3 days, for example, et cetera? But I'd like to see that decision by a smaller body than what we have currently. That we filled this room back here with our first Fling meeting, and we just can't operate effectively that way. And I would just like to see it scaled down, and that we meet the requirements that's in our code of how we conduct these meetings and what decisions are made, how much power do they have, how much money can they spend, and follow, and instead of how we've been operating, which has been really kind of loose. Far too loose.
Just an observation that there were a couple of different concerns you raised, but the first one was a difficulty in getting a quorum. There is no need to scale down the number of people on a committee to get a quorum. You can set a quorum at 25%. You can set a quorum at 10%.
I don't like doing that.
That's fair. I'm just observing that isn't a necessary solution if the concern is not getting a quorum.
We have limits typically on the number of people we have on a committee for a reason, and I think it makes a more effective committee if you've got 7 people and at least 4 or 5, and usually 6 or 7 are making that decision, rather than trying to get 20.
Yes, this is
making that decision.
Historically, the last couple of years at least, this is not a decision-making body. This is a status report body. Yes.
So can I ask a little bit about the Arts Council? Doug, you're on the Arts Council. So we used to give the Arts Council a budget. What are we giving the Arts Council, if anything, from
I believe it's $500 a year.
Yeah.
3,000.
3,000.
We still at
Okay.
3,000?
So here, this is a good one to talk about. We have the Arts Council. They're a 501(c). They kind of operate on their own. However, we give them $5,000 or $3,000, and we have a council member assigned. And so I think that's where Rob's asking, going, okay, if are they functioning underneath the city? We have a council member. Do we want to have them just keep going as is, where they kind of, they get priority booking at the community center? They are a 501(c). They, like Doug said, every time I was there, they kind of elected their own board. Does that make sense? They would vote in their meetings for their board members, and they'd fluctuate back and forth. How much what do we want to do? And each committee might be a little different. Does that make sense what we do? But that's, I think, what you're asking is for direction. What do we do with, like, the Arts Council? We have a council member, and we give $3,000, and they use our facility.
I have a question about Arts Council. So is every single participant and committee member a Highland resident?
Let's say that one more time.
Is every single participant of the Arts Council and committee member a Highland resident? So every person that attends, they're from Highland?
I believe that depends on what you mean by participant.
Attendance.
Board member?
Not just board member, but those that attend any sort of functions that Arts Council puts on.
No, I'm sure that they're not all Highland residents.
Well,
So then how are we going to make a difference between, because, I mean, for example, if you're looking at a rec center, American Fork, you subsidize the American Fork residents, but if you're a non-resident, then you have to pay a higher fee. So then why is Highland not doing that with Arts Council?
So, okay, here's, like you have your children, and let's be a little more transparent. Arts Council does run even different, that some of those board members get paid. Does that make sense? If they have the children's choir, they charge a fee, and those who are the ones directing it are making a money. Now you got your adult choir. I don't think I don't think their director takes any funds, but the youth does. And when I asked Shauna, because that was a little bit of a concern, she goes, in order to keep it functioning, sometimes like your good people who teach guitar, they get paid. They might charge $20 for a lesson, and they pay the person $10 or $15 that teach the lesson, and the Arts Council makes some. That's underneath the Arts Council. You also have the symphony. Now the symphony is not, their director's not here in Highland. They take I think it's a Thursday night out of the
Right.
facility.
They're now paying a lot more money, though.
They are, and what
Yeah,
they
several
kinda worked out,
thousand.
we decided as a council, they have to do a heavier donation. So what we've done is everyone, if it be the youth choir, they have to donate, I think it's a minimum of $500 a year, they kind of towards to be part of that Arts Council. Does that make sense? So they're paying a fee, so is the symphony. They're paying a fee to be part of the Arts Council. Is that, am I thinking right?
Right.
So how much is the symphony paying?
What was the last? I thought they went up to $3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 4,000, but I don't remember.
That's
Per
about
year?
right.
Per year.
'Cause
And
there was
that's-
negotiation about that.
And that's
last year.
because the director doesn't live in Highland?
I don't think, the other thing is, the youth choir or the youth choir, that person helps with the Arts Council, helps run functions, helps with the sound system, so there's other service they're providing for the Arts Council. I think the choir or the symphony really just uses the building.
What about the chime choir?
What?
The chimes?
I believe they're mainly Highland. I think and I don't think they get paid. I don't think they're a person. I think they're all.
So, and you were involved with this too, Doug, on the Timpanogos Symphony. But last year, we basically said, you don't have any concerts up at the north end of the county, but you use our building all the time. So there was a lot of negotiations, and John Pugh, I said that wrong, I'm sorry. He basically came back, we can't find another place. And so they offered to donate quite a bit more money. I think they increased it by, what, tenfold almost?
Yeah, it was a substantial increase, and they're much more involved with the Arts Council than they have been in the past. And one of the requirements was that they have a performance up in the
Up
North
here,
County.
and they did, yeah.
So let's come back.
So
This just helps kind of with some.
yeah,
conversation.
maybe I'll just say I'm not intending that the council will necessarily solve these issues, but it sounds like maybe there is consensus to start working on cleaning some of this up and giving some better direction. My thought is I don't want to break off all of committees in one chunk. Maybe I'll do a general, 1 week we'll talk about how do we structure, what should committees be generally in Highland without reference to anything, and tweak some of that. And we'll talk about library. Library board doesn't really need much, but we can review it, and then we can talk about the Arts Council in a different meeting and kind of figure out how we want to structure each, because each committee can be structured differently based on our needs and the city's wants. And we could kind of tackle it one by one, so we're not trying to bite it all off at once.
And I think it'd be good, because on our website underneath boards and commissions, nothing's current. You have down the wrong council members on what's going on, and we don't. We just need to make sure we also have the right. If we're going to have a council member, that they're the right assigned and they know what they're supposed to be doing.
So I think I'm hearing majority consensus that we should address this and clean it up and make sure we have good direction. We might start closer to with Fling as they start winding up their operations, since that's a more important one right now, if the council's amenable to that.
Yeah,
Very
it
much
doesn't.
so. On the Arts Council, if they're a 501c3, are they really a committee of the city?
The city can have a committee called the Arts Council that is the identical board of an existing 501c3 and make them the committee, which is what kind of has been
It seems like
happening.
they would have some independence and autonomy from the city.
We could also structure the Arts Council like we do we have now an example with the farmers market where we essentially contract with an outside entity to do things, but give them priority of Highland facilities for certain purposes.
Yeah, and if we give them money, I
still
think
give
we
them
have
money.
some say.
Why don't we wait, and when you come back with Arts
But we'll
Council,
come
let's
back
work
with
through
that.
all those details, because I think, the hardest one is probably going to be the Arts Council. If you want to,
I think we're going to start with Fling,
Fling.
because that needs to be handled, and then we'll tackle some of the other ones, and then work on Arts Council.
Okay.
Sorry, Doug. Did you have a?
No, I was just going to say that I would prefer to do the fling as soon as we can, since as far as I can tell, there's no authorization for a fling committee at all.
well, according to our website, there is.
Thank you.
have
That's
your
all I
Fling-
had for
Fling
the
delivered. It's
discussion.
just you have Corinne Press, which is down as the director there. So it's that tells we got to kind of get things put together. So.
With regard to updating that section of the website, if we include members' names, then I would prioritize updating the Youth City Council over updating the other committees.
Correct. Because that should be an easy fix. You know who they are. Okay. Anything else on this discussion item? Rob, anything else need to be covered?
No, but that just reminded me that Youth Council is probably also a committee that should be defined.
Yeah, they should be defined also what they're doing. Okay, we'll now move on to our communication items. We have our first communication item, which is number 6A, which is golf cart ordinance research by Ron Campbell.
Well, I'm going to turn the time over to our chief.
I'm hoping that this works. Stephanie said it would. She promised me. And so she's engaged in a discussion over there.
That's right. She's ignoring your claims that she promised you that it would work.
As soon as I plug this in, it disappeared.
If that
Okay.
is a budget request, I denied.
What's that?
I said, if that's a budget request, Chief William, we're going to go ahead and say
Hey,
denied.
I thought I could, this is great. We have a police car or a police vehicle that's a golf cart. I thought that was
Approved.
good. I want to infuse a little
Only
humor
the
into
police
this,
can have-
right?
Can drive them.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this for a couple of minutes. We are on a great schedule tonight, and I'm not going to foul this up, so we're going to move right along here. As requested, I reached out and contacted cities that have either allowed or that allegedly had allowed golf carts, and that was St. George, Hurricane, Riverton, Nephi, and Elkridge. Briefly, I'll go over the comments that I had, and I reached out and spoke with the chiefs of each of these cities, with the exception of Elkridge, and that will come up in just a minute. I think it's fair to say that one city created a golf cart policy, and the rest of them adopted it and tweaked it for their needs and what they wanted to do within their city, because they all read much the same, and much of the same process was followed in the creation of the golf carts. And so what you see that I have under St. George, in essence, applies to all those cities that allow golf carts. The same thing about Nephi, they all allow to a certain extent with some tweaks. But again, reaching out and speaking with Chief Whitehead in St. George, creating this a golf court ordinance created clear expectations and implemented rules and guardrails around golf carts. When I spoke with the chief in Hurricane, they did an education first program once the ordinance was passed, and that allowed officers discretion to either cite or not cite, or depending on what they wanted to do with it. And then what this did in all cases is it settled the discussion about golf carts and what's allowed and what's not allowed. Same thing in Nephi. They designated routes in Nephi. They do allow, Nephi is the only city that allowed juveniles between the ages of 14 and 15 to drive golf carts, but that's only if they were traveling to and from the golf course. Now, I don't know why they're up next to the freeway traveling, saying they're going to the golf cart course, but it is one of those things.
That wouldn't apply to us because we are at UDOT
right
to get to the golf course.
So with Riverton, what kind of sparked this discussion to begin with, when I called and spoke with the chief there was I think we can all remember an article or or a post that the chief made in Riverton, and I think it's fair to say that he was strongly corrected on his views on golf carts, and they don't allow them, and there was a lot of backpedaling there, but from what we read. And then Elk Ridge does allow golf carts, but they are receive their services from the sheriff's office, and I didn't get a response from the sheriff's office about how things are working in Elk Ridge. So let's go to what suggestions are, what they've allowed and what they've not allowed. So obviously provide a definition of what a golf cart is. What is a golf cart? That needs to be in your ordinance. In order to operate a golf cart within the city limits, I would recommend that you have a valid driver's license, and it's only allowed on city streets. And not operated on a city street greater than 25 miles an hour unless specifically authorized with a carve-out. And I'll use this as an example. So 10400 North is a 30-mile-an-hour road. We had that discussion this evening. I think it would be appropriate, in my opinion, to allow golf carts on 10400 North, a 30-mile-an-hour road. However, I would not allow golf carts on Canal Boulevard between the Alpine Highway and North County Boulevard, simply because there's no shoulder there, and the traffic that moves through there, I would not feel comfortable having golf carts move through that portion of Canal Boulevard.
So I thought 10400 was 35.
Is it 35?
Oh,
It's
okay.
been a long time since I've written a citation on 10400.
Touche. That's good.
You know.
I love it.
Anyway, I think we could go through the city and make some carve-outs. They're not allowed to cross state highways unless they're at a traffic signal or unless there's an overpass or an underpass. I think we'll have to go through the city and figure out what those carve-outs would be should you decide to allow golf carts. The golf carts are not to carry more individuals for which the golf cart was manufactured. That's one of the biggest complaints and problems that we see is kids under the age of 16 with a 4-passenger golf cart have 8 kids on it. It's very dangerous. We've had injuries occur because of this, and people have been transported to the hospital. Operated only during daylight hours, restricted from paths and trails. We find many pedestrians and bicycles that would create a problem there. I put operated during daylight hours only twice there because I feel really strongly about that. Actually, I was copying and pasting, trying to get things to fit above Highland City, and I forgot to take them out. And then finally, define a penalty for a violation of the golf cart.
Rob, my recollection was that state law precludes us from requiring a valid driver's license. Am I recalling that correctly?
You are. It does say our golf cart's exempt from driver licensing. Technically, under state law, I guess we could create our own driver license or golf cart permitting process that's separate from state law.
No.
Because I
Do
think the
it.
police department
Aaron,
wants
don't.
more
But
work.
is
That's a
that
good
golf
catch,
carts
but-
on city streets or golf carts on golf courses?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, I mean, the state law, does that involve just golf carts everywhere or just on the golf courses? Do you know what I mean? 'Cause I can
think
see
this
why
is
you
just
wouldn't have a
written
license
as-
if you're on a
written
golf
generally.
course. But-
Golf carts are exempt from driver licensing under Title 53, Chapter 3, Uniform Driver License Act.
They're exempt by the state. Does that preclude us from requiring it?
No.
Because you have other
Well,
cities that are
they're
requiring it.
also not allowed per state law too. So I think if you're going to craft an ordinance, at least the crafting of the ordinances that I've seen from other cities, they need to
They
have
included
a driver's
it.
license. They include a driver's license.
And I
So-
think we could do the same
and maybe
thing.
it's
Is that
a re-
right,
Maybe
Rob?
we need to do some research. Again,
Yeah.
these
I mean,
aren't
if other
perfect.
cities are doing it, I mean, they've had to have checked that out before they did it.
I would hope so. And this is my last slide. I think it's fair to say that, all the cities that we've discussed tonight, I think it's fair to say, and just by way of observation, none of our cities that are close to us in the county have enacted a policy for golf carts. So it might be worth reaching out to ask them if they've discussed it, had a discussion, and if they're not allowing them, why not?
I've talked to all of them.
And they said,
All being all of our neighbor cities. So Alpine, Lehigh, American Fork, Cedar Hills. I feel like is there another one? Draper. None of them are thinking about allowing them.
Hey, Chief, I have a question. I was talking to a golf cart owner in Highland, And he told me, why is this even an issue? All you have to do is a few tweaks to your golf cart and make it street legal.
That applies to off-highway vehicles like OHVs or ATVs. That does not apply to golf carts.
So making some tweaks to your golf cart
No,
to make it street legal
they're not considered.
is not an actual thing.
No, it's not. No. And we had this argument this past summer because we've have those residents follow the OHV or the ATV rule, but by state law they're still not allowed. They're not able to maintain a speed limit that would be proper for one. Some of them don't have safeguards that the OHVs, the ATVs might, but by definition, they are not an ATV or an OHV.
Are there more safety issues with golf carts versus ATVs though?
In my opinion, no.
That's what I was thinking also.
There's
But we
not a
just decide that ATVs and off-road vehicles are street legal and golf carts aren't.
Yeah, this was a discussion that happened at the legislature a decade ago that allowed cities could enact an ordinance that would allow them to legalize OHVs or ATVs in their cities, and so many took advantage of that. And I think now we're at golf carts. So
Now, none of these are saying that you have to have enough seat belts for anyone that's on the golf cart and they have to be wearing them, right? None of the policies that you came across?
none of the policies that I came across, no. But I did not read.
So that's
detail. I'll
my
bet you
recollection.
if Doug got into them, we would probably find that out.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that deep.
But I would assume.
My recollection is that when I read through the ordinances, that none of them required seatbelts.
But what about if a parent or someone
Don't.
has a child on their lap riding on a golf cart? Is that, I mean, if you don't have the seatbelt thing, is that enforceable based on what you're seeing from other cities?
Golf carts shall not carry any more than the number of individuals for which the golf cart was originally manufactured, with only one person per seat.
One person per seat answers that.
Just to
like more
prove that
research.
Doug's not the only one who does his research.
So, can I ask a question, Chief? This is in enforcement. I mean, I have kind of some qualms about this, but it seems like, and I think the things that you've listed here make common sense. We'd want to enforce those, but how do you do that? I mean, if you say, okay, golf carts are legal on city streets, but at the same time, you've got all these little details and things. I would think Joe Q. Citizen wouldn't really be aware of all the details. So they might drive when it's dusk, or they might have someone younger. Because I watched my neighbor let his 8-9-year-old daughter drive up the Alpine Highway in a golf cart, which I was appalled. Fortunately, it was a Sunday. But I just don't know. There's so many things here. How do you enforce all of that? Just when you pick them up, say, okay, you didn't do one of these 10 things.
Well, it's like
Yeah.
any other thing that we enforce. I mean, if we stop somebody for speeding and they're not wearing a
Sure.
seatbelt, or they've got a headlight out, or there might be an equipment violation. It's just there are rules that encompass around these things. Obviously, we would educate our officers on what's allowed and what's
Sure.
not allowed. But I do think a key component of this is education in the beginning. We get it out on social media. It's discussed in council meetings. It's officers are handing out flyers, or we're putting out flyers at the 23 golf carts that are in the church parking lot on Sunday. Education's a big portion of this. Most of the all of the chiefs that I talked to, once the education portion was understood, we had the compliance level became much better. And I would anticipate that would be the same thing that would happen here should you enact a golf cart ordinance.
Do you have a professional opinion as to if this is a good idea or a bad idea?
I am indifferent. We'll do whatever you want to do.
He doesn't want to get caught in the political fire.
Well, I
It's a
appreciate
political
all
issue.
the work that you've done, Chief.
Yeah, yep, happy to do it. I'm happy to answer
So
questions.
let me, as the cities, when I was looking at the cities of St. George, Hurricane, they all seem to have had a need because they have maybe multiple golf courses. Now, Highland, we have the Alpine Country Club, and then we have Fox Hollow. You mentioned already that no one can get out on the highways to do this. So Fox Hollow, probably for most of our residents, is probably out. Are we seeing a lot come, other than in the country club area, where I could see someone, if they live in the country club, riding a golf cart? Are we seeing golf carts going across Alpine Highway SR92, 4800. I mean,
I think it happens. The biggest thing that we're seeing is people wanting to go to church, to the grocery store,
okay, that's
to
what
the
I
gym. These errands that it's more convenient to just jump in a golf cart and run up to the store, or go to church, or run down to the neighbor's house, or run to the park. Those are the types of uses that we're seeing.
I mean, I see the golf carts up at Macy's. They're riding down here past City Center. I see them over at the new park. And I actually did go to a couple because some of the issues that came up were on a Sunday where people mentioned they were getting pulled over. And I went to two churches. I call it the Day Meadows off of 6,000 by Highland Elementary. There were two golf carts in that parking lot. And then I went to the Stakes Center on 10400, and there were golf carts, but there was also ATVs in that parking lot also. So I'm not just seeing golf carts. I see sometimes you have a UTV. I guess it's not ATVs, it's UTVs you see there. So that's probably where you're seeing some of the movement is in that area, right?
Yeah. And again, I would be opposed, or I would oppose allowing them to cross state highways. That would be too dangerous, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Council, this is just a communication item. We had Ron Campbell that has put this on as a communication item. Is there anything you want to share?
No, I would like to encourage to talk to the other cities adjacent to what
Brittany said.
Kim was talking about, and Brittany was talking about, and come back with a more broad perspective. And I appreciate the fact that you don't want to take a position on it. But if there's ever a situation that you don't feel comfortable with what we're doing, I do want to hear that.
And I will. Truthfully, when I say indifferent, I see the benefits of it. I also see the dangers in it. Again, I could go either way, truthfully. Yeah. If I had a real major concern with what we've talked about tonight, I would certainly let you know.
So I have I
appreciate that.
Here we're talking about golf carts. If we see a Siron bike, and I'm seeing kids now with helmets with Siron, and that's the bikes that almost look like a motorcycle, but they're electric. What are are those illegal on our streets?
So as long as they're operated as a bicycle, which most of them are not, then they're okay to be ridden. There's nothing that outlaws an electric bicycle, but when there's flying up and down the sidewalks at 30 miles an hour, or they're darting in and out of traffic at 30 miles an hour, that becomes problematic. They're not licensed to be on the road, but much the same as bicycles, bicycles can get into a turn lane as well. And so it's a really delicate approach here. The issues that we have with the Surons is if we engage in try to make a stop and make contact with the rider, and they take off, the weight of public safety and trying to apprehend a driver of this bicycle, there's no balance there. It doesn't make sense to chase this kid up on sidewalks or down through alleys because it's too dangerous for the public, for law enforcement to do that. And those that are riding the bikes know that. And so it becomes problematic.
So what are you doing right now? And I know it's colder weather, but if there was a golf cart currently in Highland going down one of the streets, are we encountering them, or what are we doing?
It's officer discretion. So some officers will encounter the golf carts, others won't. It also depends on the call volume. If officers are busy or if something else is going on, they'll be taking care of the call as opposed to worrying about the golf cart. But as we've seen, and what's brought this discussion is officers have been contacting individuals on golf carts. And that's what started this discussion this past.
I mean, it's not just one resident. I know that I've had two that have been pulled over. So, okay. Any other discussion on this?
Ron, I just wanted to get some clarification. You had asked, if I understood correctly, for more comprehensive information with regard to the cities around us, and was unclear what it is specifically you're looking for that Brittany hadn't already provided.
I mean, it's a simple question initially. Have you considered it? The answer is no, then you move on. If yes, we've considered it, tell us why you made the decision not to do it. And I think that's what Brittany is concerned about, and I agree with that. I would like to know that. But I don't know that how many of them's considered it. if they haven't considered it, I think we got to move to the next city.
Well, I know Cedar Hills because they have a golf course. I know they considered, when I asked their mayor, they didn't want to get involved with they feel their safety. Now, American Fork would be good. They only have, I think, one golf course being Fox Hollow, I think, correct, but their residents could come up on residential roads up into Fox Hollow.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good conversation to have. I mean, I think what you're asking is, you'd like to maybe consider discussing this again.
That's right.
But before doing that, if there's council members that need to be comfortable in talking with other cities of why they have not done that, that's something before. Now, this is a communication item. To be able to bring it as an action item, we would need to have 2 council members. So, Ron, you need to get 1 other council member to bring it forward. My recommendation is probably have a good feeling that you might have 3 votes. There's no reason just to bring it forward.
I agree. I bet I've got a second person.
Okay, I'm just saying, so that's what the recommendation is, and once you know that you feel like you have it ready for a vote, then.
And I really think if we do it right and we get the information and the questions answered, that we can get 3.
I'll be honest, I'm just going to talk a little bit about this. It's a whole thing with prohibition. When you prohibit it, then sometimes people want to do it more. I had one of my kids had a friend that owned a golf cart, and I think they rode around on that golf cart when they were 12, 13 years old. And I always said, no, you're not allowed to. Of course, they don't listen. But I love the fact that by establishing, yes, we're allowed golf carts, but you have to have a license. I am hoping then that it will enforce and let police have a little bit more leeway in pulling over those kids on golf carts. I think it's completely unsafe having unlicensed drivers driving golf carts. And hoping that'll decrease that if we do allow licensed drivers on them with certain safety precautions.
Okay. With that,
Well, so is our direction now to bring it back as a communication again after we talk to neighboring cities to say, why haven't you done it, basically? That's right. Okay.
Okay, so you want it as another communication? Okay, you want it as a communication or you want it as an action? If you got 2, you can bring it as an action, but I'd recommend you have a good likelihood of a 3rd. So you can decide.
Right. I understand the difference, and I'm weighing.
Why don't we plan on doing
I'm telling my kids, if you want a decision right now, it's going to be no. Let me think about it.
Okay.
I want that opportunity to come back and have a communication item, have more discussion, and get a feel of whether we really are going to get 3 people.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're asking the staff to do too much.
Okay, so it sounds like what I just heard, come back as a communication item for further discussion. At what time do you, are you going to wait just to hear from other council? They've talked to the other cities, or they've done the research, they feel comfortable to be able to make a decision? Or what's the trigger that you're looking for?
Well, the chief is willing to talk to the other cities, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the report that I'd like to get back. And any council member wants to reach out and do it on their own, I'm going to, and anybody else that wants to, I welcome that, and we can have that discussion when this comes back. Can you have it for the March meeting? Is that too soon? I don't want to push
14th
this.
or 18th?
No, it shouldn't be too soon. So you're
4th or
talking the
18th?
first March
4th,
meeting?
4th or the 18th?
4th or the 18th? You tell us.
It will have to be the 4th. I'm out of town on the 18th.
Yeah, let's do the 4th. Thank you, Chief. That's a lot of work.
You're welcome. Just while I'm up here, we've discussed flock cameras. I got an email today that we will probably have 2 that will be installed tomorrow.
Wonderful.
So the one at the mouth of the canyon up here, and the other one over here at 6400 West and Timpanogos Highway.
Now, can I just, since you brought that up, and we do have as a communication item down there, we'll come back and forth. There's a legislative action about this that I believe that Christian Chevier has. Have you been able to work through that where you feel comfortable about?
Yeah, we testified in committee today. It did pass out of committee today, so it will go to the House floor. Representative Chevrier has been fantastic to work with on this. We met the first day of the session, and we've been able to find a good balance on this legislation. There's a couple more things that we would really like to work out, but it's going to provide some guardrails in the reporting process that we're all in favor of doing.
But we were still able to move forward with flock cameras.
Correct. Yep.
With what the bill's being proposed, if it passes, we should be able to move forward with our flock cabins.
And in essence, and I was just reading through a protected version while I'm sitting here, but what we're doing now is just cleaning up some code that was kind of misplaced. And then we want to be able, it references hot lists in the legislation. We want to be able to provide a little bit more balance on what hot lists are and how they can be accessed.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Okay. We'll now move on to item number 6B. That is a purchasing policy. David Mortensen.
Thank you, Mayor. Ooh, that's a little bit loud. So this is an item that originally we had planned to bring during our budget retreat a few weeks ago.
Chris, is yours turned off? Okay.
Yep. I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to slide over into this little gap. So apologize for the technical difficulties. Okay, so we originally planned to bring this item for communication during our budget retreat. Oh, do I get a new one? This would be even better. Testing. Better. Okay. So due to time constraints during that meeting, we weren't able to discuss it. So we wanted to bring it to you in a council meeting. We just wanted to have a conversation and communicate some things regarding our purchasing policy and purchasing limits. It's a timely discussion that relates to one of the questions that was asked by a council member tonight of why are we seeing this particular item tonight when we haven't seen it in the past. And I'll get into that. So if we can go to the next slide, Jay. Okay, so just going over our current purchasing limits. So this is who has to approve certain dollar amount purchases. So anything that's up to $1,000 really only requires a department head verbal approval. No written approvals needed, nothing enters our software. They can go ahead and do it. Anything between $1,000 and $2,500 has to be entered into Cassell, our financial software, and approved in Cassell by the department head. Anything between $2,500 and $25,000 also goes into our financial software and gets approved by the department head and then the city administrator. And then currently, based on our purchasing policy, anything over $25,000 should go to city council for approval. In our current purchasing policy, there's not a lot of detailed language about specific types of purchases that go over $25,000 needing to come to council. And I think over the years that has been interpreted differently, perhaps by people. And so that's why in some cases, an item that hasn't been brought in the past has been brought recently because we're wanting to be more consistent. So if you go on to the next slide, Jay, these are some of the historical inconsistencies, some of the reasons that we feel like this has been happening. And it's not an all-inclusive list. There could be other reasons, but some of the main ones. A lot of these larger purchases over $25,000 are what we consider routine purchases. We do them all the time. It's big utility payments. It's waste management payments. It's our big TSSD payments that we make each month. Technically, they're over $25,000. So according to our purchasing policy, we should be bringing them to the council to get approval to make that purchase. Another reason is maybe the purchase or maybe the item was already part of an approved budget, and the department head or supervisor that's making that purchase felt that that was sufficient approval from the council, and they moved forward. Other times, there's a contract that the council has previously approved the contract, but a payment on that contract exceeds the $25,000 limit. And so it's kind of a questionable area. Do we really need to bring this back to the council? I think sometimes it hasn't been, sometimes it has. And then sometimes, hopefully this hasn't happened, fortunately, and we don't have a list of all of these listed out over the past, but it could be times where we have heavy council meetings with a lot of agenda items, and we wanted to get to it, but it just didn't fit in the meeting, or maybe it was even in the meeting, but we couldn't get to it because we ran out of time. I don't know. It's just another possibility. Then also the timeliness of invoices. We do everything that we can to get invoices in a timely manner, to get approvals in a timely manner, so that these projects can move forward. There could have been instances in the past where we received an invoice late, or we didn't anticipate a particular purchase, but it needs to move forward for the project to work. And so there could be some of those instances where we've been inconsistent with what we've brought to council. I would expect during some of those instances, there would still be communication. Obviously, the city administrator would know about it. Hopefully the mayor would know about it, and the council members may be outside of the meeting, but they haven't been formally brought for approval. So we see these inconsistencies as a problem that we'd like to button up and kind of clean up. And I think the best way to do that is to amend our purchasing policy to be more clear. There's various things that we can do. On the next slide, we give a few ideas. Again, not an inclusive list of ideas. Jay, if you could just take me to the next one. So one of the ideas, if we just leave our purchasing policy as is, we would probably start bringing a lot more items to you for approval. If that's the case, we could put those items on the expedited list, hoping that they would be approved quickly and wouldn't take a lot of time. A similar idea, we could put a list of items over $25,000 on the consent agenda for each meeting, as long as those items are in the budget. And then if they weren't in the budget, it could be a separate expedited item, something to that effect. Those are the two options if we don't do anything to our purchasing policy. If you're open to amending our purchasing policy, we could increase those approval limits, which would limit the number of items that would need to come to the council. And this is finding that line between the council feeling like they have proper oversight over the purchases that the city makes, and what dollar amount they feel comfortable giving authority to the city administrator and the department heads to make those decisions, and what levels the council would like to see and approve. $25,000, our current limit, just based on my knowledge of other cities. We're currently compiling some information from various cities, but from cities I've been in and heard from, some are also at that 25,000 limit, but it is becoming a bit outdated. Most cities are a little bit higher than that. I know when I was in Eagle Mountain, we increased it to 40,000. When I was in Vineyard, we increased it to 50,000. Just something to think about. If the council's not comfortable with that, we can leave it at 25,000. It's just at your discretion. Another idea is, and we did this in Vineyard as well, is separating out purchases that are related to public works projects or capital projects and just increasing that dollar amount. Or we could do both of the last thing I mentioned and a capital or public works items. A number that I've used in a prior purchasing policy that I put together was 125,000. So if there was a pipeline or a sewer lining project or a utility payment, anything related to public works infrastructure that was under $125,000, the city administrator would have the authority to approve that purchase. If it's over that, then obviously it would come to the council for approval. And the purchasing policy, if we did that, would be very specific in its definitions of what qualifies as a public works project or capital project. Another thing that I've done and seen is carving out specific things, like if the purchase is part of a contract that has previously been approved by the council, there's no need to bring it back to the council. If that's something you're interested in doing, we can definitely put that in. This one's a little bit more extreme, and maybe there's not an appetite for it, but only requiring approval from the council if the item is not currently approved in the budget. That would significantly reduce the amount of items that we bring to you, but it could go a little bit too far in limiting the amount of items that you see in the meetings for approval. And then just any other ideas. This is just a communication item. We wanted to open the dialogue and get ideas from you. If you have any, give you some time to think about it as well. And if there's people from other cities that you know of that you can talk to and pick their brain to find out what works for them. We're, like I said, compiling a list from other cities of what they do, and can come back with further discussion about those results. So that's really all I have to present, and happy to answer any questions or entertain discussion.
Let me just make a comment. I think it has to be kind of relative to the cities or to the size of the city budget. So, I think Lehigh's city budget's like 200 million or something, and American Forks is 55 or 60. We have a much smaller budget. And so as a council person, I can understand some of the argument, like on the capital and public work types, to maybe increase how much, but I would have, unless you go through incredibly carefully on the city budget every year, and I try to do that, but somehow or other I've been missing all these years that we've been paying all this money to the Central Utah Water Conservation District, and it's up to $100,000. And so I think it's good to kind of, for transparency for the public and for us to know how much we're spending on some of this stuff. So, I think a lot of this stuff could be expedited or put on consent, and maybe we want to increase the limit some, but if we're getting up to hundreds of thousands of dollars as a council member and a representative of the citizenry, I'd like to know where the money's going and have some say, at least. So now that I know much more about the conservation district, how much we're paying the Central Utah for this, and it's a lot of money, I think, and especially in a small city budget. I think last year, what was our general fund budget ranges between 13 and 16 million, depending on the year. And your public works is another 20 million or something. But at the same time, it's good to have some accountability for these bigger things. So,
yeah, I think that's a great comment. And I think that as we look at other cities, we'll definitely look at the size of the city and
the size of the city and their budget.
Yeah, the size of their budget, and kind of see how we compare when we're making a recommendation for what we think those limits should be.
David, that kind of brings a question. I've looked at other cities' agendas, and sometimes they have a list of all the expenditures happening. Is that usually for smaller cities, or is that just so they know what was being expended and they approve it?
Yeah, my experience, I haven't worked for a very small town, but my understanding is that many of them do something similar where no matter the amount, they get a list of all of the expenditures that happened that month or since the last meeting. If the council wants that, we can provide it. It's just up to the council of how much detail you want, how much oversight you want, and how much you want to delegate to the staff to look through those details and tell you about the big stuff.
That's what the school district puts out, their list of expenditures. And when I was at my Central Utah 911, they do the same thing. They have like a list of all their expenditures from the month attached to their packet.
I used to work with several cities, smaller, none over 5,000 in population, where they had at their council meeting a check register, essentially, where they would approve a list of checks that the city was issuing that month. For them, even though it was 5,000, they still had, a page or two of them. Ours would be much longer, but I think doable.
So one of the things you mentioned, David, is maybe to go look at other cities on what some of their purchasing guidelines are, and maybe we look at those that are similar size. Like you said, you look at a Lehigh and them having a much higher or different spending policy, just because it might be good just to understand what other cities are doing, and then. I do think we need to kind of look at it. Hey, if we're okay at the 25,000, anything to come in, I think it depends on how each individual's personality of control. It's like your own budget at home. Are you involved in it or not?
Well,
it'll be personal.
And some of the boards that we sit on, I sit on the North County Waste Transfer. They have quite a big budget, but they give us every meeting. We get a summary of the expenditures and how much the budget we spend and basic things, and a check register if we want to look through it. Same with the animal board, much smaller budget, but we see a check register every time we meet. I just think for accountability, it's good, and Doug loves to look at this stuff.
How does software approve?
It's true.
You say that Cassell approves it. How does software approve?
Yeah, so it's like a queue system. So the creator of a requisition will enter it in as they're logged in as them. And then when they submit it, the system is set up with various queues, so it knows to go to their supervisor to get approval before it goes to the next person. So it's a tree of approvals that depending on the amount of the purchase.
David, here's we had one item today, and maybe we should just Now, maybe here's one thought. Maybe we go for 90 days or 120 days where anything above 25 we have to approve. So we have an idea of what we're really saying might be an issue. Because it might be, if we have one a meeting or one every 2 meetings, I mean, it might not be as big as issues we're trying to bring. But if we start to understand what would be coming in, then we'd have a better idea maybe how to respond to it. I mean, that was just kind of a thought that if we operate for a little bit to see where that would be at, we'd understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and we've been trying, you've probably noticed we've been trying to put more things on the agenda that we feel need to come to the council. There honestly probably could be more things that if we're interpreting the purchasing policy literally, that anything over 25,000 needs to come.
I mean, because like
Like
Scott
I
said-
approved TSSD today and it was $84,000,
But
right?
okay, and I do think there's some reasonability that you have a monthly bill that but like what Scott kind of brought up, it probably was good for us to understand that assessments were to be going up, and how do we handle those? Because that is an expense that's increasing. But then we had a certain dollar amount inside our budget, correct, for those?
Yes.
And that met within our dollar amount, correct? And so I mean and I don't know, that's up to the council, because I can say, hold it, you had that approved, and I think in the past it was approved in the budget, so they did not bring it to council because it was in the budget guidelines.
Yeah.
However, when we're doing road projects, hey, if we approved $1 million for roads, we're still bringing road projects in. Does that make sense? They're going,
And
hey,
we're
I
still
need that
getting bids, yeah.
Yeah, another idea, I guess, we could still provide as much detail as the council wants via email, as far as check registers or reports, detailed reports. But as far as items that come for formal approval in the meeting, we're just trying to find that balance of giving you the opportunity to approve or deny something, but not make our meetings even longer. We don't want to be here all night, just like you don't. So we're just trying to find that balance of what the council's comfortable with.
Personally, I would like to see anything over the approval limit show up on a council agenda, just as a list with a description next to each one on consent. I don't think that generally there's a need to discuss it, but if we have an approval limit, then everything above that ought to come onto a council agenda.
Other council members, you feel similar?
I agree with Doug. I think we can increase our approval limit, though, maybe up to $40,000.
Maybe we try that.
40,000,
Maybe
yeah.
just make sure we come on consent. Let's see what we're starting to see. and
Yeah,
we have a
one
better
of the
idea.
problems we could run into with something like that is just the timeliness of paying our bills. If we're like a TSSD payment that Aaron approved, that's going to get paid tomorrow. If
But
we're having
not
to
talking
wait,
about approving each one. We're talking about information.
right? And so what I'm asking is whether that information would be prior to the final approval of the purchase or just an informational after we've done it. If we're looking for an approval on consent before we make the purchase, then that could cause problems with late payments and timing of paying invoices.
Personally, I would be okay with a consent item that is approval or ratification.
Any other things we need to discuss on this?
So for like kind of the routine ones,
Correct.
approval or ratification, but anything that like we're going out to bid on, I mean, it comes as more of a full action item
Right.
type of a thing.
I think so.
Right.
Okay, and then
We'd
looking
still like
at
to know about the others.
absolutely, and then looking at what other cities are doing as far as approval limits and having that discussion continue.
Right.
I think we're all agree with that. Okay. We'll now move on to item number C, which is the community development update, and that will be Jay and Rob.
Me first. I'm going first on this one.
Is your mic on?
Yes, it's just not in front of my face. So just want to get update. I did get our website updated. My little portion of it, one portion of my portion of it. If you go to under our webpage departments, and then there's a current projects under the community development tab, you will see a list of our current under construction or in review subdivision, site plans, etc.
And now where do we go? Okay, I'm here on the website.
So
Where
at
do-
the top department, it'll bring down a big menu, and on the left side under community development, there's a current projects link.
Okay.
And then if you just scroll down, you'll see a long list of different things. And I have the name of it also has a link to the site plan or subdivision plat for you to look at. So I'm just working on keeping that updated so you can go find things there. With that, we do have a subdivision coming in for preliminary plat approval next week to the Planning Commission. It's a public hearing in case you're interested. It's an R140 7-lot subdivision, nothing unique about it. It's R140. The other topic I wanted to talk about was this land use table that I mentioned when we did the big update for the land use authority table that this would follow. It's been several months. I want to give you an update and get some direction from you. When I talk about a land use table, this is what I'm talking about. Many cities implement it where you have every zone listed at the top and every kind of use you may allow or not allow listed on the sides, and you go for each zone whether it's allowed or not. So it's kind of easy at a glance to see which zones allow different things. Right now, basically all of our zones, except for town center, just do it by lists of words, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here's our uses. Problem with that, I mean, one reason we have wanted to do this, well, so this is our town center uses. One of the issues I have when I've started working through this, if you notice, ground floor uses, 1-story retail, 2-story retail, flex use retail. I don't know why those are separate items. I mean, town center was kind of a little bit different thing, but then below that, food bakery, food donut shop, candy store, food grocery store, organic foods, ice cream, yogurt parlor, nut or cheese store. So I don't know when you'd want to allow an ice cream shop, but not a nut shop in a zone. So part of what I'm trying to work through is consolidating uses into a single category, because that seems really specific for something that doesn't need to be. And then, for example, these are 4 of our commercial zones. They all address financial institutions in ways that are different. For example, residential professional just allows financial institutions. Professional offices says financial institutions with some examples. C1 says financial institutions except for non-chartered financial institutions. And CR zone allows banks or credit unions specifically, as long as they're not more than 10% of the overall zone. So part of this would be consolidating this into one thing, but that means the council will have to make some decisions on how that actually gets implemented. Because if I just say financial institutions and I define it as banks, credits, whatever they are, it doesn't quite capture what our current rules are. So this is a lot of ways of saying, I've been working on it. The question I have for the council is, do you want me to keep working on it with everything else we're still working on? Not that I don't want to, I've got it there. Just as a highlight, we're still working on our general plan. We're talking about committees now as well, because I decided to add another big kind of thing to work on. I don't want to overwhelm the council, because it will be a big update to do. So it's kind of just asking for direction on, we still like this, keep moving forward with it. Maybe just bring it to us in a couple of months when we've gotten through budget and some other things and it's a little bit lighter, or just give it to us as soon as you're ready for it. What would the council like?
In July.
I think later on in the summer, after we get the budget, general plan done and all that stuff, then I think we can look into fixing this. And this is great that you're going to do this. It's great. Yeah.
One thing I thought is, if we do finish up our general plan or get it closer, we can then start aligning uses towards that future land use map a little bit better.
Right.
And start picking out, this is what we want this zone to look like. And then we can actually implement that, taking the policy from the general plan, implementing it into code, into this land use table. So, okay. So I wanted to let you know I hadn't forgotten about the request to work on it. We have other things as well, so I will bring it back later this summer. Then
Sounds great. And then Jay?
Brings us to general plan.
Okay. So at the last meeting, I had let you know that we are working with Landmark Design to go through steps that will allow us to flesh out the general plan elements that were presented to you a few weeks ago. These will necessitate some additional meetings. We have a proposal from Landmark Design where we would have between 5 and 6 meetings. The first option is 5 meetings, and we would discuss things like land use, housing, economics, transportation, water use and preservation, and an additional discussion meeting to tie in anything that we need to. That would be in a format where the Planning Commission and the Council would be here on site, but the consultants would participate virtually. Option B would be about 6 to 7 meetings. It would cost about $6,200, but the consultants would be here in person, and we would discuss additional items such as parks, trails, open space, and sustainability as additional elements. Brittany, you asked, or you suggested earlier at the meeting that the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, talking about which items are the essential ones that we have to have in the general plan. That option A they would both hit those, but option A would mainly focus on those. An additional, so the dollar amounts that I'm telling you are net the water grant amount. So we received a grant from the state to cover the creation of our water element for our general plan, and so this would cover that, and so the costs that I'm telling you would be with that factored in. So,
Jay, I'm sorry, I missed for option A. What was the cost on that one?
About $3,800.
Thank you.
And $6,200 for the second option. And we could, I mean, that's kind of the ceiling, and the lower value is the floor. We could definitely negotiate somewhere in between where, hey, maybe we only have one consultant on site instead of two, and maybe we only do, X number of meetings instead of, the 5, 6, 7, whatever is being proposed. The soonest that we would be able to do this is likely March 11th. That's the first week we have between, going forward between a council meeting, the week of council meetings, and planning commission meeting being the fourth week. So any feedback or thoughts about how you would like staff to approach this?
So if you caught what Jay was saying, there's one because we've asked to kind of have a little bit more meetings, the costs went up and there's one that they can do it virtually. And you said, how much would that cost if they did it virtually?
If they did all the meetings virtually, it would be about $3,800.
And then if they came in person?
$6,200.
So that's kind of the two options that, if you want to approve to say, hey, we're going to have more meetings to have Landmark come in. So it's really, do we want to increase their contract? And of those two options, which one?
This is so critical in the next 10 years, hopefully not 15 like we've done in the past, but for the next 8 to 10 years, I think we just bite the bullet and put a little extra more into it so that we get a better product.
I agree with Ron.
I'll agree with Ron too. Note that in the minutes.
Yep.
It was February 18th at 9:26 p.m.
On this date.
So I think you've got kind of the direction that we'll go ahead. We want in person.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Okay, let's keep moving on. We are right now. The legislators are actively moving along. I kind of each bill they keep on adding more bills. I'm going to ask for help from Kim and Ron. I think Doug's probably chimed in. Brittany, let's kind of go through, and then Aaron, we'll try to walk through some bills that were kind of happening today. We had the retail facilities incentive one, which they talked about in the league today, is SB 280. I don't know if that's going to really affect us too much. The big one was SB 262, which is a housing affordability by ordinance in our general plan, binding forever. I was going, how can you bind a council forever in a city forever?
But did you see Aaron's comment on that? I saw your comment on that one, of a loophole to get around it.
Yeah, I think that it would make city councils just put everything into agriculture or something very benign so that almost everything has to be rezoned so that they're protected,
Yeah,
right?
so we've seen some cities that go in anything that's vacant ground is all agriculture. And then that way they have to always go through a zoning code change. Because if it's the affordable housing that's already in, then it's granted. Now, let me ask you about the density overlay. Was that just a discussion, or are they saying that density overlay needs to be part of this bill? A density overlay is saying if we approve it as this and the developer comes in and shows affordable housing he gets higher density. Was that just a discussion item? I couldn't understand if it was discussion or,
That was just discussion. Are we on SB 262?
yeah.
Yeah, that was just discussion.
Okay. The next one was public safety was HB 465, which the cities need to have a public safety plan. But I believe that's only first-class cities. That would not affect us. Is that correct?
Well, this has to do with your homeless mitigation.
That's a HB 465?
Yeah. So it compels first-class cities who receive homeless mitigation money to do an agreement with DPS to increase public safety. If they don't do that agreement, then the state will withhold gas tax and the homeless mitigation money.
That won't affect us
No.
if we're class 2?
Yep.
Okay. Is that what your understanding is?
Yeah, this particular bill will not affect Highland. However, the worry of the league and the worry of any municipalities. I was in a meeting on Friday for 2 hours with the league, and then as chiefs we've discussed this. The worry is that if this is the precedence that it's setting, that if the state's not happy with the way that you're operating your city,
Withhold
they
money.
can create legislation and come in and take over.
Is the homeless mitigation what we authorized money for a month or so ago when we sent money to Provo? Or is that different?
We have money taken out for homeless
Yeah.
out of our budget, but then we also sent 3,000 to
Yep.
the county.
See, and that's also part of the discussion is the state's threatening to withhold funds that have not all come from the state. They've come from cities as well.
That's
And
right.
they withhold mitigation funds that cities have put in towards other cities to mitigate homelessness.
So
This is very contentious on the Hill right now.
okay. Any other input on that one?
I think they're working on changes on that in order to so potential alternatives, partnership relationship with DPS, so making it as, not a must, but a, may kind of thing.
Yeah, the problem with it is it's all, the word coercion is really thick when we talk about this bill. It's all being coerced by the legislature. This is a bill that comes from leadership, from the governor, the president, and the Speaker of the House.
So ULCT, they have an action item list of what they want us to reach out to our representatives and oppose, and this is one of them. But they're working on eliminating that withholding of funds right now, taking that section out.
Okay, the next one I have is SB 277, which is record management. Stephanie, are you familiar with this one at all, or anyone else?
Yeah. This is creating your new government records office. ULCT opposes this one. No, this one is supported by ULCT. And so it's going to select a director for 4 years and create a whole office, government records office.
Okay. HB 444 was data privacy. I don't know if there's anything. Then HB 355 was gravel pit expansion. I mean, we have a gravel pit.
Mm-hmm.
It could expand, but we believe because it's owned by a government entity. That's why it'd be important to understand what Central Utah is thinking there if they're, when Kilgore's going to be done. Because we keep hearing it's a year out, then it's another year. How soon is that? Because that one could affect that one. The SB 154 is attorney-client privilege. Rob, have you chimed in on that one?
We got an action alert, not through the league, but through the Utah State Bar, which is pretty rare, actually, to oppose this. It would have subjected attorney-client privilege materials for cities to state audit. They've been reworking it. They've changed it to make it more of a, like how Discovery's kind of where they request it, and then you can affirmatively say, no, this is privilege, and here's the list of the documents we're going to withhold, and kind of proceed that way. I think they're still opposed to it, as attorneys don't like any encroachment onto attorney-client privilege, so we'll see where it ends up.
And ULCT opposes this one also because essentially it's saying that if a city wins 9 out of 10 of the arguments there, we would still have to pay for the arbitrator.
Because they lost one.
Because they lost one, yeah.
That's the other concern is that has the feedback. HB 364 was a government immunity for if we hire an outside law firm And there's something, they also have the government immunity, from what I understand. That's what I understood from that bill. Then HB 417 is public safety retirement. Chief, once again, that I guess if they retire, that they then could go work inside the schools immediately.
Yeah, so this one just came out recently. So part of the issues that we're having with law enforcement is getting school resource officers that want to be in the school. So with the changes that came in retirement last year, there were penalties for coming back before 1 year. You would not take those penalties on if you were hired back as a school resource officer into an entity. Those penalties would not be imposed on you through URS.
So that's a good thing, isn't it?
No, it is a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's a good bill. HB 454, Aaron, am I thinking that's the transportation and public safety fee? You want to give an update on that one? Because I know you've been talking quite a bit, and if anyone else has.
So this one, I think, is of all the bills, is going to affect us the most. So well, depending on if it passed. So Representative Peterson's bill is back from last session, which says that you can do transportation and utility fees within these realms. So we would have to redo ours to match her realms. But a change to this year says you've got to have a minimum of 3 categories: residential, commercial, and houses of worship. So this is to try to appease the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The second part of this bill says you can only do public safety fees if you've already done them as of January, and if you're a smaller city who is doing this under contract. So you can't do it if you're your police force, and you have to re-up it every 3 years and have the council vote and say, yes, we want to do this. There is still supposed to be a bill coming out of the Senate on transportation and utility fees that would be very, very difficult for us. And so the hope is from ULCT, either Representative Peterson's bill passes or nothing passes. Like the House likes her bill, the Senate likes the Senate bill, but neither chamber takes up the others. That's the strategic goal.
We understand that our Representative Brady Brammer will possibly be the one bringing it in the Senate. The bill to not allow or to modify the transportation, the public
Well,
safety.
essentially, ULCT said the wording they used said that a bill in the Senate and would make these fees impossible to do.
So we need to be aware that that might be coming down the path.
So ULCT has come out and said, please action items support HB 454,
Which
local
is
government
the
fees.
Peterson out of the House bill, support that bill to see if we can get that one to push.
The league told me they have a meeting with Senate leadership on Thursday to see if they're going to like HB 454 well enough to take it up. So we'll know more then.
It seems like this is inevitable in some fashion. I mean, they just keep bringing it back, right?
Yeah, but if we can get Senator Peterson, it will
Yeah.
kind of put it to bed, because now it gives the clarification it's a bill, and hopefully get it put to bed.
So it's good to get that one so that we don't have to worry about it again this year or next year.
The problem is you have a religious organization that is stating that they don't want to pay certain fees for roads. And I thought Senator Peterson did kind of do some carve-outs there, right?
Yeah, so essentially we'd have to consider that as a different category and decide, do we want to charge them full rate or give them a discounted rate?
Maybe say you can only go to church in golf carts. That'd fix that.
So the different categories, that is simply that we need to set different rates, rates for each of those categories, not necessarily different, but
like residential, commercial, and charitable.
Does it have anything to do with considering those categories when we're doing our study?
Yes, so it should take into account, because the study would have to be different than ours is currently, because you're really taking into account the use of those 3 different categories, right? And which would then lead to the rate likely being different.
Right. Okay.
So where is Senator Bramer on this?
He is going to be bringing a Senate bill to do away with any transportation or public safety.
Is Senator Bramer representing us at all? Or is he just representing himself?
The answer is no.
No.
That is our problem. Is that the cities
He's forgotten where he's.
Well, he represents Pleasant Grove and Highland, and yet he's bringing a bill that the couple of the cities he represents goes exactly against what they've done. Now we have a meeting tomorrow night. You have at 5:30. I sent you guys all an email.
I'll be there.
This might be something just to ask, be respectful, but ask a little bit. You know, he just doesn't believe fees. He believes that there goes through truth and taxation, or I'll let him answer that. Ask him that, and you can ask some of the questions that come about truth and taxation.
Yeah. Can I talk about a bill that ULTC, CT is not tracking, and that's Senate Bill 37. And the reason that I believe we should be concerned about it is the precedent that it's going to set. And that is the state wants to change through Senate Bill 37, which already passed the Senate. It now has to go to the House to get a House version of that. And it essentially takes property taxes, and instead of going to the school districts, it will go to the state. They can put it in roads, they can put it wherever they want, and then they will bring back the 4,000, the WPU amount to those school districts. And it just boggles my mind that a conservative party that doesn't believe in local control, that takes the control and puts it to the state, where they then decide where these funds are going to be spent and how they're going to be spent. They literally don't have to take any property tax and give it to the school district. They can get it from the general fund. That's the way the bill's written. That precedent is deeply concerning because it won't stop with the schools. They can come to the municipality and say, that property tax, we want that. We need that. We know better than you how that should be spent. And that precedent deeply, deeply concerns me.
Well, also an issue with this is that the districts no longer earn interest on the funds over the year, rather the state will. So districts are estimated to lose about 1.5 million in total lost interest.
It's just mind-boggling.
So that's something that will be, as we're out there, we'll see. What was interesting, now the land use bill, I think, isn't the big land use bill the 368? Is there anything on the land use bills that we need to be aware of that are coming down? I mean, we had our building inspector of HB 58. We have some others. The small lot by right seems to have kind of gotten stalled a little bit. I know that there's one that's about a bonusy density. It was HB 37. So yours is SB 37 on the
SB 37.
HB 37, I believe, was an option on bonus densities. But are there land use bills we need to be aware of that are coming down?
I mean, HB 368, ULCT voted to support this one.
Okay, that's what I thought that most of the land use they'd kind of
Yeah.
have to work through. I don't think this.
It seemed a lot of it, they managed to convince that they've done a lot of work on land use. You got to give it a few years for
To
those
see if it works.
policies to actually take effect before constantly changing. And it seems that they're holding off.
Now, a big one that I think we need to all chime in on is HB 300.
Yes.
Which is election. Stephanie, do you want to give any input there, or how that comes about?
Well, my understanding of that is that they're just placing, it's going to require a lot of poll workers if that goes through. They're requiring poll workers to man even the ballot boxes. And ballot boxes would not be open for, the 24-hour cycle. They would be only open for a certain amount of time. And then you would have to prove at the ballot box, you have to show your ID at that point there. My only concern is the lines of people that would end up at the ballot boxes with the limited amount of time and then the time that it takes to have that identification. I understand the concerns too with the making sure that the right people are voting. So we'll see where that one goes.
I think the issue is that, first of all, this will cost counties $6 million ongoing, $465,000 one time. So, counties will pass it on to cities.
Yes.
And then number two, the sponsor did make a remark that he wants to, use it as a pilot for the next election, since it won't be a presidential election. But municipal elections, have a low turnout as it is. And then when you're trying to pilot a program like this, it's going to be an even lower turnout. So I think they are looking at alternatives, like using your driver's license number instead.
I think where you came in and you had to put your number on your write-in ballot, that was one amendment that they were considering.
The last part of your,
The
I don't
last
think it
four
was
digits?
the full.
Last four digits.
Last 4 digits. Yeah.
I would hope we put it on, you'd actually put it on the ballot?
No, well, your
Envelope.
Envelope.
Yeah.
On your envelope.
The return
Yeah.
envelope.
That whole thing about we track your ballot, that drove me nuts. I hope they don't track my ballot. They track the envelope, but not the ballot. My ballot is
Before we get to the school
private.
district one, are there other bills that we need to discuss?
I mean, there's so many bills out there that track your ballot, but also there's several bills out there that say if you have to sign a petition, that now they want to be able to put that information on a public lieutenant governor's website saying who signed it, your information, and even if you mark your information as private, it will still be public.
And what's this on?
I mean,
Or
there's
is this how
probably
you vote, or if you're doing
signing a petition,
signing a referendum?
a signature petition, not just a referendum, but also initiative or candidate signature collecting as well. And so the issue with that is there are people out there, you know, for example, in domestic violence situations who can't have their information on a public website with their address and voter and signature information. And so now unable to do that. But, you know, even if you're marking it private, it still will be public information.
Other bills other than the school district bill?
I'd say just quickly the wildland bill.
Oh, yes.
We had a conversation with David Stewart last week about this bill, and we think it's going to pass status quo. We do feel like there's been some improvements made, but one thing that we're able to understand is I think there's going to be a lot of details to be worked out in the implementation of it, right? Like, where does that money go? As far, if you remember, they're going to collect fees, and then we could apply for those, for grants to help do some mitigation, right, on those dangerous properties. And so, but in the administration of it, I think there's still going to be some wiggle room working with the department who's actually going to facilitate those funds that we're going to be able to get some help with. So,
Chief Patton, what would you estimate the area of Highland might be in this wildland interface?
Probably 25%. Okay. Maybe more.
So 25% of our residents will be getting an extra charge from the county for fire protection. It's going to go to a state fund, what Aaron's talking about. We're hoping in the bill it would say something where how we get it back, because they're paying it to mitigate fire. Would that be going back to local fire departments? What are you hearing?
That's been the big question, which they've talked about. It's really not written in there that they'll address it in the rules, because the big concern with, you know, for like us is if we have the plan to mitigate and we're taking money out of Highland, we should then essentially be able to go and get that money for mitigation efforts in the city.
That's what we're hoping. We talked to David Stewart on Thursday about that. We're saying, hey, we'd like to have some mechanism. Maybe it won't be there. We'll just have to work with that department, the state, and how that works out. But so we have engaged David Stewart, our lobbyist, on certain bills to say, hey, please be aware as this starts to come down. You know, like the HB 454, we said support that. You know, and as it gets going, we're gonna have to get close with him to make sure he's telling other legislators support. We don't know what the other bill is, you know, but we've gotten a little bit of indication.
So do we know where Kristen Chevier sits on HB 454? I mean,
Nope.
she's our representative.
We'll have to. I'm gonna talk with her. I mean, who's planned to come tomorrow night? I mean, now this appears to be for a Mike Kennedy town hall. You know, so. But it appears he's inviting, you know, so they'll probably talk about some other bills. But they have Mike Kennedy coming, so I assume, does anyone know, is it, Stephanie, you're smiling, do you know when they reserved, is it more geared towards Mike Kennedy, or what is it?
No, I'm just smiling because you said there's a meeting tomorrow night, so I'm counting how many of you are going to be there, so I know whether to post a notice of quorum.
Okay, hold on, how many? Okay, Ron and Doug, who else?
What time again?
5:30 to 7. Brittany, were you going to be there? So yeah, we do need to post a notice.
Yeah, I'm going to try to come.
So that was probably a good catch. Okay, we'll now move on to the school district bill.
And it's here.
Yes, it will be here in our council chambers, 5:30 to 7. Mike Kennedy will be here, Christian Chevier, and Brady Brammer. So,
Can we bring tar and feathers?
Oh, I think we need. Okay, I have learned
just
that there
teasing.
might be bills you don't like they're doing, but you need their avocation on another bill that they're also favorable on. Does that make sense? And it might be the one we're talking about with the school district. You know, I mean, so we got to be careful because you might need the support here. So anyway, the school district bill, I emailed everyone a letter that the mayors of all the central and west cities sent to Senator Grover. So if you're looking for where we're pulling this up, Brittany, you can kind of help guide us through this because I know you've been very involved with that. So the provisions to retain in the bill is employee protections. My understanding is that would be a 2-year protection for employees and also for, and I'm trying to think, is it classified and unclassified employees? It's really just about about 150 employees at the city office or the district that are underneath a 1-year contract that wouldn't be included. Is that right, Brittany? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Teachers and classified.
The next one is keep reimbursement of split costs. That means we've paid for studies, and if we might have other expenses to be able to hire consultants to make sure that we're getting assets and liabilities and that's in there to reimburse. School board transition in the bill. It's talking about once the school board, if they're elected on, if it be November 5th, the next day they could be sworn in and start serving. And so it's not waiting to, the bond obligation is, I think it's where the bond is at, the dollars kind of follow the area where the bond has been pulled. Am I thinking right, Brittany?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Necessary amendments is funding allocation. And what my understanding is the funding is that they're going to give $60 in the bill per student to each of the districts. So if we have, I'm just going to use, if you had 10,000 students, then you're going to have 60,000 or 600,000 come to you that year, and that would be for 2 years. There was in that bill that we had talked about and brought up with you is that 50% of that allocation was going to go to the South to try to resolve any legal, to try to resolve that. That is being removed. The South is not amenable to that, so we said remove it. That will not be part of it.
Well, what are they going to want?
That my concern. This is the one aspect I hope the bill would address is getting things resolved. Okay, Brittany, what have you heard? I've heard dollar amount. What dollar amount have you heard the South would like?
Well, a lot. They would like a lot, but I think the bill has removed that, and I think it's good as it is. I think it's as good as it's going to get.
They want the South. I was kind of going. They would like us to take care of all if they have earthquake issues.
Yes.
And they want. Now here's my problem. Voters turned that down.
Yep.
Now they want us to be part of that. I was going, isn't that neat that you'd like the voters say no, but you're going to come try to take a swipe out of it? And we have to work with the South. But I was hoping we could get the legislation aspect so we're not taking student dollars and we could get something resolved saying this is a compensation for things. But there's nothing in this bill about compensating the South because what they were requesting was not agreeable amongst all the other cities.
And it probably never will be. None of this comes from the WPU, though, right?
The $60 per student is that's a WPU, but it's not the 1% that was in the bill. It's now set at $60. Is that my thinking?
Yeah, and what they had wanted was something that was not approved during the Canyon Jordan split.
Okay, contract flexibility. I'm not. That is what's that kind of mean?
I'm not sure if that refers to them being able to choose which district.
And they could maybe start hiring while they're still employed in another district.
Yeah, something like that. But the plan had been for the guarantee to be at the school that you were at initially.
Okay, interlocal mayor board representation adjustments. It's in there. We're just stating that it can be a city council member or an employee. It does not have to be the mayor. The steps for lanes and protections for essential employees. Removal of reference to the director. In the current bill, they're encouraging that it used to be shall hire director, and they're now saying may. We just want to make sure it says may hire a director because we're not sure the central would hire a director. We probably would contract out. Just so you're aware, we've had presentations from. There were individuals that helped with Canyon's Jordan split. We have had presentations from them. We had presentations last week from Rob Smith, who used to be an employee that was the business administrator from Alpine School District that also has submitted that he'd be willing to do some contract work with us. So we are looking at contract instead of administrator.
And the current language is the may, not shall.
Yes, I think they've already addressed that. I don't know on the legal concerns. That's the one that we're trying to figure out how the physical liabilities of school debt. There's some things that way. Transaction timing, it's kind of setting some of that. I'm just going to as we kind of look at some of the things, the one that also needs to still be removed is they have what's called a weighted mayoral board. What that means is they're going to take the property tax of each city, and based on the property tax value, then that's the weight how the mayor can vote on the board. Lehigh has come out and says they're not in favor. They would rather have each city have a say. We understand, and this is all hearsay, we understand the South has worked it out because Orem would have the majority, but we understand that Orem has agreed to be only 59% of that.
49.
rated. I'm sorry, what?
49, not 59.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, 49%. And so we believe that that's probably been worked out. But other than that, there's some, in the letter, it just kind of states that we're just asking, the voters voted a certain way for the split. And as we start to try to change it, we're going to be, the South is asking for money or different things, how it's going to be done. We're just trying to say, keep it to what we told the voters. Don't do a bait and switch on them. And so this happened to be signed by all the mayors, of all the mayors in the Central and the West, that was sent to Senator Grover. So, Brittany, what other things do you think we need to discuss on the school district?
Nothing. I think we're good. I think they had their final meeting of the districting committee tonight, so I think that's pretty much done.
You're talking the board members voting and how the district's going to be broken up?
Yeah, correct. How the district will be broken up. The kind of the plan was to keep it by cities, the seats by cities as much as they can, and I think they were really successful in doing that. So I think it will be Alpine, Cedar Hills, and Draper will be a seat, and then Highland will be its own seat with a little piece of Lehigh, and then Lehigh will get 3 other seats, so 3.5 seats, and then American Fork will get the other. Yeah, and the boundaries are pretty clean between the cities, aside from the little overlap with American Fork and Lehigh and Highland.
And that's independent of elementary schools, junior highs, or high schools?
So that was using as the primary consideration the city boundaries.
There's still an overlay potential, right?
There will be a little bit of an overlay between elementary schools and junior high. The other thing they were trying to do is divide out the secondary schools so that one district didn't have like a bunch of secondary schools.
Right. Okay.
And they were also trying to keep the schools in the city where they're like the school in the boundary where they're located, right? So having Lone Peak be in the Highland seat rather than Cedar Hills and Alpine, since it is physically in Highland.
Thank you very much.
And if you want to, so on that SB 188, just if you guys ever want to go and see what the status is of that bill, you can go click on the Utah legislator site, put in SB 188. You can look at the bill text, the status of it, go see how people have voted, where it's at. And then also you can click on hearing debates, and you can actually go and listen to all the audio that's been discussed on that bill as well.
That's really good.
It tells you all the readings and when it comes out of committee.
What we are hearing on HB 188 is if there is some litigation, that it has to go to arbitration first. Does that make sense? They don't just start lawsuits. And then we understand out of arbitration, it goes to either the state auditors or the attorney general. So, I mean, there's another steps before, they've tried to put that. Now, we'll see. We're hoping that, we are worried that, at least I'm personally worried about the litigation aspect. I'm going, if we can try to get something resolved, but it does not appear, so there might be some arbitration going on. But we believe that will be between, once these boards are put in place, it won't be probably the cities arbitrating it. It will be probably the boards.
Yeah, and the idea that a city would be able to form its own district once a district in the future decides to split, that a city could then split. That's dead, I hope.
It's not. They currently can. It's still that's not part of this bill.
Oh.
Well, I understand that because they can currently do that. So, but we just have to. This is the bill. Of course, we're trying to watch. In the meeting, there is an interlocal board meeting that's our interlocal. We are going to be putting out some marketing for possibly looking and name. The other 2 districts have chosen the names, and so we are going to be soliciting for that. It would just be a placeholder for the district, just so we can kind of go out.
What names are you hearing?
Brittany, what are you hearing?
I'm hearing Alpine Peaks is the one I'm hearing the most.
I'm hearing the most about Alpine Peaks.
I like Alpine Peaks.
I think we've heard that. I don't know. We'll hear other names. We're asking the public to submit, then they'll kind of come in. And like I said, it's just a placeholder. Any board can go back. We just thought instead of having the board take all their time to try to do the name, we probably could save some time where that's not their worry once they get in. Okay. With that, is there anything else? Okay. Okay, just looking at meetings, just help us real fast. Our next meeting, City Council, will be on March 4th. We have Lone Peak next, oh, there it is. We have Lone Peak Public Safety next Tuesday, as well as Planning Commission. Cell tower meeting is not something, this is the neighborhood meeting on the 6th at City Hall. You can see the meetings there.
That should be fun.
Okay. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron, second by Scott. And I can't remember. Do we have to do a voice call? Then adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 9:58 p.m., Aaron.
Wow.